would like to do that. I certainly would. Oh, John's here. Hey, John. Great. Good to see you too. Okay. We really appreciate everyone staying on mute. Okay. Ellen's here. Oh, great. Good to have you, Ellen. All right, friends, we're going to go ahead and get started. First, I'm just going to do a real quick introduction to our speaker this evening, then we'll do a fuller introduction just before she starts her presentation. And you may also want to put yourselves on speaker view so that you have a good bird's eye picture of what we're doing and seeing this evening. So let me introduce Layli Mapayan. Layli, could you wave and say hello to everyone so they could see you?
Hi, everybody.
Okay, awesome. There you go. Incredible, fantastic. And Layli is going to tell us about a lot of very fascinating things that I know you'll enjoy, and we'll be glad you were here for this evening. We're going to go ahead and start doing something different in the program. Well, first, let me welcome those of you that are new, first of all. Let me start there. I'm Sherilyn Stevens. I'm the facilitator / moderator for the series. And the series is hosted by the Baha'is of Wicomico County, Maryland. If you know the city of Salisbury, Wicomico County is part of, or Salisbury is part of Wicomico County. That's where we are in the Chesapeake Bay. And this is a series that meets every second and fourth Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. for formally 2 hours until 9:30. However, the friends often like to stay longer for further chatting. And so we're usually here for another hour or so after that. We are going to try and keep that to 10:30 this evening because we know people have other commitments the following day. Let me also introduce to everyone Nason. Nason, can you wave and give a holler to everyone there so they know who you are?
Hi, everybody.
Thank you. Sorry. Nason is co-host. He's also the tech guy, and he's provided us this platform. So you can message him or myself if you're preferably him, if you're having any technical issues. And you can message me privately. We will have chat disabled after the devotional portion and when we go into the talk. And we'll open it back up later during the discussion section. So I think that's all I want to say about that right now. This session, and it's quite apropos too, we didn't plan it this way, but it worked out that way. We're actually introducing something that we're going to continue to do on a regular basis, and that is welcoming in our ancestors. And this is something that Layli is going to talk about and give us a lot more information about, but we're actually going to practice it a little bit before we get there. So we have a very short devotional plan for this evening. I've invited several people to be that devotional for us. And what we'll do, let me just tell you what's going to happen. First, we're going to have a heartbeat drum. And that's the actual drumming of the heart. And if everyone could please stay on mute, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. After that heartbeat, then we will hear a prayer for the departed. I think I got that backwards. Did I get that backwards? One of you guys look at your email that I sent you. I think I have those two backwards. But anyway, we'll have a heartbeat. There's a prayer for the departed. This is performed by Haley and Milton, not our Milton, but another Milton. And it has a little ethnic flair to it, the way in which they have composed the prayer for the departed. This all will be followed by Milton Conway, our dear Booby, performing Hollow Reed. And then Milton and Chuck Hendrickson will do a call and response of Ya Baha'u'llah Pa. When that's done, we're going to return to the heartbeat of the drum for about 2 minutes. And this heartbeat of the drum, this is so central to connecting with ourselves, with our spirit, with relaxing. So we're going to relax coming into the devotion and leave the devotion in the same way. We're going to be quiet for a few moments after the heartbeat stops, and then I will open it back up after a few moments of silence and then introduce Layli. And then we will start the formal program. So I hope you all find this worthwhile and enjoyable as well. Part of calling in the ancestor and where it relates to Baha'is, you know, we're enjoined in the writings to pray for those who have departed, to pray for our parents, and likewise they can intercede for us. It is by calling them in is really almost the same thing. We're asking them to be with us, to bless the space, to help us connect with our better selves, or any other specific thing you wish to ask them for, just as you would in prayer, except we're doing this in a collective space. And those ancestors are not just physical or genetic ancestors. They can also be your spiritual ancestors. Abdul Baha, Sadie Oglesby, you know, any person or personage that you feel a connection to. So when we start, while that prayer for the departed is being sung, we're going to have the chat open so that if you would like to put in the name or names of the ancestors that you yourself are calling in, you can share those with everyone by putting them in the chat, okay? And then we'll have the heartbeat and then go forward from there. So with that, any questions or anything from anyone before we start? Okay, so let me get my share screen on, and we will start the devotion with this prayer for the departed, and either silently or in the chat calling in our ancestors.
Oh my Lord, oh thou forgiver of sins, bestower of gifts, dispeller of afflictions. Verily, I beseech thee to forgive the sins of such as have abandon the physical garment and have ascended to the spiritual world, ascended to the spiritual world, to the spiritual world, to the spiritual world. Oh my God, purify them from trespasses, remove their sorrows, and change their darkness into light. Cause them to enter the garden of cleanse them with the most pure water, and grant them to behold thy splendors on the lofty forgive the sins of such as have abandoned the physical garment and have ascended to the spiritual world, ascended to the spiritual world, to the spiritual world, to the spiritual world.
Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Baha'u'llah is my doctor. He writes up all of my prescriptions. He gives me all of my medicine in the prayer room, in the prayer room. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Baha'u'llah is my doctor. He writes up all of my prescriptions. He gives me all of my medicine in the prayer room, in the prayer room. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Baha'u'llah is my doctor. He writes up all of my prescriptions. He gives me all of my medicine in the prayer room, in the prayer room.
Oh God, make me a hollow reed, from which the pith of self hath been blown, that I may become a clear channel through which thy love may flow to others. Oh God, oh my God, make me a hollow reed, from which the pith of self hath been blown, that I may become a clear channel through which thy love may flow to others. Oh God, make me a hollow reed, from which the pith of self hath been blown, that I may become a clear channel through which thy love may flow to others. Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya
Thank you, friends, very much. And we'd love to have some feedback from you later on. And I do want to say that calling in the ancestors does not require a prayer for the departed. That was simply my choice for this evening for us. So I am so excited to introduce a really phenomenal woman that I had the privilege of meeting this summer as part of an Association of Baha'i Studies study group and on Africanity and the Baha'i faith. And that's Dr. Layli Mapayan. She's a PhD. She is the Catherine Stone Kaufman 67 Executive Director of the Wesley Centers for Women and the Professor and Chair of Africana Studies at Wesley College. Her most recent scholarship engages womanism, African worldview, and the Baha'i faith in dialogue around solving the most vital and challenging issue, the eradication of racial prejudice, and advancing the faith's clear mandates for racial amity, racial unity, racial justice, and ultimately the oneness of mankind. She has also published 2 groundbreaking works in the field of womanist studies, namely The Womanist Reader from Routledge in 2006, and The Womanist Idea, again from Routledge in 2012, with a 3rd Womanism Rising, which is forthcoming. She has served as a Fulbright Specialist at the University of Liberia, as well as a Contemplative Practice Fellow of the Center for Contemplative Mind and Society. And she currently sits on the Board of Directors of the Global Fund for Women. Please help me welcome Dr. Layli Mapayan. Layli, we are just delighted to have you here. We're so honored. Thank you.
I think the honor is all mine, Sherlyn. You have such a wonderful series, and I was so honored when you asked me to be a part of it. And it's, it was right after we met in the summer when we finished that reading group together. You asked me, and you're like, "Well, what's your topic going to be?" And I said, "I don't know. I have to think about it." But then, as you just reminded me, after Chadwick Boseman passed away, we got talking about Black Panther and how we could make a connection and use that as a jumping off point for something in the racial healing, racial justice series that you do. So I love that. And it gives us a chance to kind of talk about some stuff that I really love talking about that I think is related to racial justice and racial healing. Before I really get started, I'm just curious. I can't see everybody, but maybe you can. I'm curious how many people have seen Black Panther, the movie? Because there might be some people that haven't seen it.
Right.
Most people have probably seen it, but there might be a few who haven't.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll still kind of get it, but hopefully there are also some fans here. It was really a breakthrough movie in a lot of ways, which is why we can use it as this jumping off point. So we'll get into that, but if you haven't seen it, I recommend that you see it.
Well, would you like to know? Folks, wave your hands. You got to wave for me because I can't see if you just hold up. Wave if you've seen Black Panther. Just wave. I know some of you aren't visual, or were able to see you. Okay, the first screen, everybody's waving that's got a face on. And the second screen, yep, about that too. So we've got about 83 people here right now. And so I think the vast majority have seen Black Panther.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad. That'll make my job a little bit easier. But even so, I think that everything I have to say will still make sense. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Let me just make sure that I'm able to do that. It looks like I am. So let me get that up and running. Can everybody see it all right?
Yep.
All right, good. All right, so, I titled this Wakandans Meet Baha'u'llah, What Africanity and the Baha'i Faith Have in Common, because I had a lot of conversation with people who were very captivated by the concept of Wakanda. And I noticed people starting to call themselves Wakandan, a little bit tongue in cheek, but a little bit like, defiant in terms of saying, this is actually a kind of identity. And so it was a fascinating development. I actually met one of the actors from Black Panther Sope Aluko a few months back, and we had some conversation stuff. So it just got to be something that I want to talk about. But before I get into Black Panther, I want to pick up where we left off just a few minutes ago by calling in the ancestors. And I want to take a few minutes to give homage to some of my own ancestors, in particular my Mende ancestors. I did my African ancestry for my birthday this year, and I found out that my family is 100% Mende on my mother's side. And so I want to share with you a little bit about my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my mother, and their role in my lineage. I want to start with my grandmother, Janie Mary Glassworthy. Janie Mary Glassworthy Murphy is here on the left.
If you could pause just for a moment, Laylee, sorry, there's a scratchy noise that's coming through. So everyone, please make sure you're on mute. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm sorry, Laylee, but it was really interfering with what you were saying.
Okay, no problem. I know it's being recorded, so it's good to have the sound clear. So my grandmother was a licensed practical nurse. She raised 2 girls as a single parent. My mother was born in 1940, so that tells you when she was doing this, with the help of her mother, Laura Glass. I'm named after her. She was a Garveyite and a root doctor. My grandmother, Janie Mary, put both of her girls through Spelman College, and she herself was admitted to this college. This is the leading Black women's college in the country, but she did not herself go. She was a staunch Christian, and she was the organist for Wheat Street Baptist Church. If you've been to Atlanta or you know Atlanta, then you know Wheat Street Baptist Church. It's one of the biggest Black churches in town. She also took care of my own son, Thaddeus, while I finished my final year at Spelman College. So she was a big figure in my life, and she transitioned many years ago, but she's somebody who's still very much alive in my spirit. I also want to dedicate this to my beautiful mother, Mary N. Worthy, who was also Mary N. Worthy Dumbleton. Her birthday, her 80th birthday would have been tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
She became a Baha'i in college, at Spelman College, during the 10-year crusade. She appeared in the 1965 Ebony magazine article on the Baha'i faith, and she raised 5 children in the faith as a housewife, mother, artist, civil rights activist, and passionate peace advocate. And we lost her in 2018, but again, she's very much alive. She made me who I am, and just lives on in our family legacy. When I learned that my ancestry and my mother's ancestry and my grandmother's ancestry and going all the way back was 100% Mende, that connected with some things that I had already found myself drawn to without knowing it. Here are some things that have been important to me in my self-discovery about my Mende ancestry and heritage. This book on the left, Radiance from the Waters, Ideals of Feminine Beauty and Mende Art, is actually sort of an anthropological and art historical study of Mende women and their artwork and their concepts of beauty and morality and all these other things by a Black woman art historian. And that book I read, and when I read it, I really resonated with it, and I thought, I wonder if I'm Mende. And then it turned out that I was. And this music album on the right, music of the Mende of Sierra Leone, I had actually checked this music out as an album from the library when I was in high school, not knowing that I had any personal connection. I was just curious. And so I, listened to that music and really loved it. And here you can see a picture of some women playing one of the instruments that the women often play in their music. My husband, who is from Liberia, West Africa, where there also are Mende people, had actually given me one of these instruments as a gift when we first met. And this other image in the lower right-hand corner depicts a ceremony that took place at a museum in London. I believe it was at the British Museum, where the museum was a holder of one of the famous masks. You see here this Bondo mask, or also called a Soho mask. It's the type of mask that is known to be a women's art form. It's associated with women's secret societies in West Africa, and particularly in in that part of the world. And because they had the mask at the museum, there was an issue of, you know, how they had acquired it and its spiritual significance to the women. And they decided that they were going to do a ceremony to reconnect with it and all that. And so it was a very meaningful engagement that they had. And here, this other picture down below, this is a picture from the 1800s of some Mende women in Mende land. And you can see that they look fierce, they look strong, they look beautiful. You know, it tells you something about the women's tradition in this particular cultural group. And then these blue cloths that you see here are some of the indigo cloth that they weave there. So all of these things have significance to me as I've gone deeper into this. And, you know, we talked before about honoring and inviting in the ancestors. And one thing about this practice that's very important is that it's a way of acknowledging that our ancestors still exist, that when they passed into another realm, they are in another form, but they have not ceased to exist. If you live in a very materialistic reality, that you feel like death is the end, you feel like death is means someone is no more. But in the African tradition, the ancestors are still very much with us. They are alive. Even if we can't see them with our physical eyes, we can feel them, we can see their influence, we can communicate with them in a variety of ways, and they can communicate with us. And so I'm going to say more about that later, but I wanted to begin by honoring my own ancestors and my own heritage, because it's been such an important discovery and something that has really animated my spirit in a number of ways. So just in case you're wondering where Mende land is, here's a map of Africa, and you can see the red circle here, the west coast of Africa. This is Sierra Leone, and my own ancestry is from there. Liberia is right next door, and there are Mende people all over. Of course, they have moved around, but that's the ancestral homeland right there. All right, so I want to say a bit more about my mother. This verse from Baha'u'llah that you see here was one of my mother's favorites, and it's one that I posted on Facebook right before she passed away. We had a few days before she passed away that we were aware that she was passing away. And I wanted to share it because I think it's such a beautiful set of statements about how to be in the world. And they remind me of my mother. My mother used to always say, love isn't just a feeling, love is an act. And she really lived her life that way. And I know that she was inspired by Baha'u'llah. So I want to share this first. And then I want to share another quotation that was really important to how she lived out love as an act. These words of Baha'u'llah say, be an ornament to the countenance of truth, a crown to the brow of fidelity, a pillar of the temple of righteousness, a breath of life to the body of mankind, an ensign of the hosts of justice, a luminary above the horizon of virtue, a dew to the soil of the human heart, an ark on the ocean of knowledge, a sun in the heaven of bounty, a gem on the diadem of wisdom, a shining light in the firmament of thy generation, a fruit upon the tree of humility. So you can imagine what it was like growing up with a mother, like this, someone that was, trying to teach us in these ways. This other quote here is one from Eric Fromm, who is not coming from a religious source, but he made a statement that my mother used to quote a lot and really loved. He said, the question is not whether man returns to religion and believes in God, but whether he lives love and thinks truth. If he does, so the symbol systems he uses are of secondary importance. If he does not, they are of no importance. So she always talked about living love and thinking truth. And she would say, this is the essence of religion, living love and thinking truth. If you don't do those two things, then what do you have? So now let's jump into Wakanda. I think that Wakanda gives us a really fascinating jumping off point to think about humanity as a whole. So I love this opening scene. If you saw the movie, you can remember when we first got to witness Wakanda, when we got to see the city from a distance. And here we see T'Challa, a Black Panther, staring down at the city. We see something that has skyscrapers, has mountains protecting it. We have, it's really a hidden land. It's a protected place that's both technologically advanced and ecologically integrated. And so hold that in mind as we look at a few other scenes from Wakanda. Here's a city scene from Wakanda. I remember the first time when I was sitting in the theater with my family the week that it came out. We were at a late night show, and I was so captivated by the color scheme and by just the texture of the texture and the aesthetic of life in Wakanda. You know, the colors are earthy but yet vibrant. And you can see this language that they use. It's not an English script, it's a different script. And you see all different kinds of Black people walking around. They're not all uniform, they're diverse. And you know, you see this very eclectic space, but yet it has a beauty to it. So keep that aesthetic in mind. And then the next scene that I want to show is this one here. Here you see T'Challa with his friend Wakabi on Wakabi's farm. And one of the things that I was very impressed with is that these rural agricultural areas were so close to the city and seemed to be integrated in a way that showed that cities and agricultural areas can be very integrated. It showed a kind of attention to ecological balance and harmony that I thought was very important, and I was glad that they represented it in the film. And then here we see T'Challa with his sister Shuri in her science lab. You will remember that Shuri was a technological wizard, an important scientist in Wakanda. Here she is, both elegant as a woman, but also obviously somebody who has built up this vast laboratory. And as you went through the film, you saw that her laboratory wasn't just material, but it was also pulling in the forces of energy. You had a sense that there was spirituality in her laboratory. You had a sense that there was, you know, many kinds of ways that she was doing science that are different in sort of the world outside of Wakanda. And so that was another impressive aspect of Wakanda. So this scene here, if you remember, this was the big scene right around the time or right before T'Challa had his coronation as king of Wakanda after his father's passing. And in this particular ceremonial scene, all of the different tribes and diverse peoples of Wakanda were brought together. And we got to see all of these different tribes and different kinds of people being represented in their different outfits, being represented in their different adornments, their, you know, different approaches, and they were all together. So that was a very, I don't know, visually stunning moment in the film. So keep that also in mind. So now I just want to kind of review what we looked at. First, there was a community where African worldview, aesthetics, and science flourished because they've been protected. Think about those mountains protecting the city of Wakanda. And you'll remember that in the movie, Wakanda was invisible. The rest of the world, except for a few people, barely even knew that it existed. And that's a metaphor, in my mind, for the way that African worldview is also sometimes out of view. If you don't have the lens to see it, you don't see it. But once you do see it, a whole new world opens up. This was also a community where nature, people, and technology were in harmony. That's something I'll say a little bit more about in a moment. But we often think about the tensions between nature, people, and technology in the world today. And then it was a community that recognizes both social and spiritual dimensions of reality. It was not a materialistic community or society, but rather one that understood that there were multiple levels of energy. And if you've seen the film, you remember, for example, the healing that they were doing with the purple flowers and all sorts of things that showed this understanding of human relationships to different energies and the power and ability of different human beings to wield that energy for good or for evil. But generally speaking, they tried to wield it for good. You also noticed a community where women and men share power equally. In Wakanda, we saw many powerful and dynamic women. We saw many powerful and dynamic men, and they each had roles in that society. So it was a community that also showed unity and diversity, African style. Okay, so I just want to pause with a few questions here. And these are questions that I will return to again at the end, but I want us to think about them now and think about them again later. The first is, what would be different about the world, and that is the world we live in today, if African culture was the foundation of global society? That's a thought experiment that Black Panther helped us to do, but we can think about it beyond the bounds of that movie. That was a single person or a set of people's idea about what that would look like, but it could also look like some other things. The second question is, what does the world have to gain by learning more about African worldview and culture? As I said a moment ago, African worldview, if you're African, you live it. But if you are not African, if you haven't been trained to see it, you might not see it, because the Western educational system has a way of making it invisible, or a way of making it seem like it's less than it is. And part of what I've attempted to do as a scholar, as well as in my life as a Baha'i, is to help elevate and make African worldview more visible to people that are less familiar with it, and to have us consider, what does it offer for the rest of the world, and what kinds of problems can we solve by becoming more aware of it? A third question is, how is African culture and worldview consistent with the revelation of Baha'u'llah? This is a new question that I'm asking us to think about this evening. When we talk more about African culture and worldview, as we will in a few minutes, and then even beyond that, begin to look at the revelation of Baha'u'llah and pull out some of the quotations from Baha'u'llah's writings, what new connections can we make? And last but not least, how might African culture and worldview help advance the cause of Baha'u'llah? And again, I'll say more about that as we go on this evening. So I now want to talk about the three central building blocks of life in the African worldview. And a word about African worldview here. On the one hand, it's possible to talk about the cultures of Africa as being very diverse, but there's also a point of view that talks about an African ethos that cuts across culture, in which you can find commonalities in many of the peoples of Africa. And while there are scholarly debates about whether the cultural unity of Africa thesis is more true, or the cultural diversity and pluralism thesis is more true, I take a both and perspective. And what I want to focus on right now is some of the things that I think many of the African cultures have in common. And this isn't just what I think, this is, a lot of people have written about this. These three elements are spirituality, community, and ecology. So I'd like to talk about each of them in turn. All right, so in terms of spirituality, in African cosmology, everything is spiritual. It's infused with spirit or of spiritual significance. That means that spirituality pervades all of creation, that everything, nothing is apart from spirit. There is not a dichotomy between spirit and the material world, but rather these things coexist. And everything that happens, every person or thing that exists has spiritual significance. In terms of community, kinship is the fundamental organizing principle of life, from family to community to all humanity to the cosmos. And in fact, I'll say a bit more about that in a second. Humans form a community with all other beings, from animals, plants, and minerals to forces of nature, the cosmos, and the spirit world. And so the idea is that, we think of society typically as just human community, but this idea of ecology goes even farther and says that human beings are part of larger communities. These communities include the things that we typically call nature. They include those forces of nature. They include the spirit world and all of space and everything. So now I want to talk about the concept of ever expanding community in African cosmology. Many African cosmological accounts refer to ever expanding circles of community and inclusion. You can see this diagram on the side here. It's pulled from a particular book, but many authors talk about this as from African cosmology of the Bantu Congo, but John S. Mbidi talks about it in African Religion and Philosophy, and there are other places as well. At the center of this is the individual or the dyad. So in other words, the smallest community is the very small, just the bond between ourselves and one or two other people. So it's followed by the dyad. The dyad could be a husband and wife, it could be twins, it could be a mother and child. There are a number of ways to think about the dyad. And then the next circle beyond that is family, and then household, and then beyond household, there's the tribe, and then the nation, and then, beyond that is all humanity, and then the cosmos. And so you see that each one of these circles is a larger and larger network of kinship. And so that is a fundamental animating idea within an African worldview. And you see this concept of Ubuntu characterized by this often repeated phrase, I am because we are, and because we are, I am. There's always that reciprocal relationship between individuals and the collective, however that collective is defined. So, to put it simply, unity is already an African concept, and Baha'u'llah came to make it the defining principle of world civilization for the next 500,000 years. And I take that from Baha'u'llah's writings. You know, the idea is that he has come to humanity at a time when humanity is ready to embrace the notion of worldwide unity. Everyone on earth is now aware that there are other people. There's no place on earth that you can go that people think that their group is the only group. And the idea that we're all connected on a common landmass, we're connected through commerce, we're connected through ideas, we're connected through the internet, we're connected through our global well-being. I mean, the coronavirus pandemic has really driven that point home. So the first point of commonality, to get back to the title of tonight's presentation, is that unity is a concept that animates African worldview, and it's a concept that animates the Baha'i faith, coming straight from Baha'u'llah. Now, this 500,000 years, just to give you a sense of perspective, if this is where we are right now, 350,000 years ago, that's when Homo sapiens appeared, roughly. Okay, so imagine 350,000 years ago until now, and now imagine going 500,000 years into the future. And what Baha'u'llah is saying is that we unify here, and all kinds of new potentials open up for humanity over this span of time. We might feel right now like we aren't even going to make it through this little impasse. We worry about climate change, we worry about global pandemics, worry about all these things. And in fact, these are problems that we need to solve. Baha'u'llah says that if we discover unity, then we will be able to get through this. And if we don't find unity, then world conditions will force us to find it. There's no escaping it. We have to come together and recognize our fundamental unity as a species. All right, so now I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and talk about the African worldview through a lens that's very timely to this day. Many of you know that today is the first day of Kwanza, which is an African-American or Africana holiday that was created in the 1960s to help forge and facilitate Black unity and the reclamation of the African roots of people who had been dispersed all over the African diaspora, particularly in the United States. And I want to talk about the Nguzo Saba, which is the 7 principles of Kwanza, through the lens of Baha'u'llah's revelation. On the left here, you can see a kinara, which is the candle holder, with the 7 candles representing the 7 principles of Kwanza. You see the unity cup, you see the corn, which is the fruit, you see the mat, which is the African foundation, all of these symbols that are used in the celebration of Kwanza. On the right-hand side, you see one of Baha'u'llah's books, the Kitab-i-Aqdas, which is considered the most holy book. That's Baha'u'llah's book of laws. Of course, he wrote many, many tomes and many, many tablets and verses. This is just one of them, but I'm going to pull from Baha'u'llah's writings in the rest of this presentation to help bring to life the 7 principles of Kwanza. So let's just begin for those who may be a little bit less familiar with Kwanza. As I mentioned, it's an African-American holiday. It lasts for 7 days from December 26th through January 1st, and each day is governed by a specific principle intended to uplift the community. And there are key symbols that are used. I mentioned the candle holder, I mentioned the candles, I mentioned the unity cup. The corn represents children and the future. Often there are also other crops such as fruits, which are the fruit of collective labor. And then there's the mat, which represents the Afrocentric foundation. And on the last day, the zawadi, or the gifts, which represent the labor and love of parents and commitments made and kept by the children. So the principles of Kwanza are 7, Umoja, which means unity, Kujichagulia, which means self-determination, Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility, Ujamaa, which is cooperative economics, Nia, which is purpose, Kumba, which is creativity, and Imani, which is faith. And so we're going to talk about each of those in turn. So we start today with the day Umoja, which means unity. And Baha'u'llah famously said, so powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. All right. He also said, the well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established. He also said the purpose of justice is the appearance of unity among men. There is no principle more central to Baha'u'llah's revelation than unity, and unity is the first day of Kwanza. It is a central principle of Kwanza. It is a central organizing principle of the African worldview, as we looked at moments ago. So let's take a look now at the second principle, Kujichagulia, which is self-determination. This is the idea of a people determining its own destiny. So there are a few quotes from Baha'u'llah's writings that I think help bring this principle of self-determination to life, because this is determination towards goodness. This is self-determination towards freedom and liberty and dignity and all these things which are good. So Baha'u'llah said, they that are endued with sincerity and faithfulness should associate with all the peoples and kindreds of the earth with joy and radiance, inasmuch as consorting with people hath promoted and will continue to promote unity and concord, which in turn are conducive to the maintenance of order in the world and the regeneration of nations. I pulled this quote in particular because he mentioned the regeneration of nations. And part of the reason that Kwanza was invented as a holiday was for the regeneration of the nations of people of African descent who had been harmed by the Mapa, the great disaster, the Great Trouble, which we often know as the slave trade, and closely related to that is colonization of the countries in Africa. So Baha'u'llah also said, the great being saith, the word is the master key for the whole world, inasmuch as through its potency, the doors of the hearts of men, which in reality are the doors of heaven, are unlocked. And I chose this because part of self-determination rests upon the power of the word to create. And in fact, the creative power of the word, of language, of that language that comes from the spirit and from the heart, not just mere words, but the creative power of the word is also a central feature of the African worldview. So in the Baha'i faith, we refer to Baha'u'llah's writings as the creative word because it is that kind of word. It's like the logos in the Bible. It's the kind of word that has creative power, and that is linked to self-determination. So the third principle, Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility, is connected this way. Baha'u'llah talks a lot about people serving humanity and the ways in which they can do that. He says, occupy yourselves with that which profiteth yourselves and others. He also says, it is enjoined upon every one of you to engage in some form of occupation, such as crafts, trades, and the like. We have graciously exalted your engagement in such work to the rank of worship unto God, the true one. He also said, blessed and happy is he that ariseth to promote the best interests of the peoples and kindreds of the earth. So in the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah, while placing this heavy emphasis on service for all people, has also elevated the work that we do in the spirit of service to the rank of worship, which means that when we are doing work, when we are doing a livelihood, when we are doing service to others, when we are using our talents in our crafts and professions and so on, then we are in fact worshiping God through that action. We are also contributing to the well-being of society, the well-being of families, and the well-being of individuals, which is very closely aligned with Ujima, collective work and responsibility. So now let's talk about Ujama, cooperative economics, which is the idea of people working together and collectively supporting their community through their economic activity. Baha'u'llah said, the best of men are they that earn a livelihood by their calling and spend upon themselves and upon their kindred for the love of God, the Lord of all worlds. And I should point out, if it's not already intuitively apparent, then when Baha'u'llah is talking about men, he's also talking about women. People of all genders are included in these exhortations from Baha'u'llah. He also said, having attained the stage of fulfillment and reached his maturity, man standeth in need of wealth, and such wealth as he acquireth through crafts or professions is commendable and praiseworthy in the estimation of men of wisdom, and especially in the eyes of servants who dedicate themselves to the education of the world and to the edification of its peoples. Now, there's a lot going on in this quote. It's saying that when you get mature in life, you need wealth, but you should get that wealth through your crafts or professions. That's the commendable way to become wealthy. And when you have it, you dedicate yourself to the education of the world and the edification of people. So you're using that wealth not just for yourself, but for the uplift of society, which is the essence of Ujamaa. Baha'u'llah also said, the people of Baha should not deny any soul the reward due to him, should treat craftsmen with deference. In this day, the sun of craftsmanship shineth above the horizon of the Occident, and the river of arts is flowing out to the sea of that region. What he was saying there was that we always should pay people their due. It is a statement that is implicitly opposing unfair wages or opposing exploitation of people in their work, and it is affirming that all work is of value and that people should all be fairly paid for the work that they do. So there is an implicit economic system in Baha'u'llah's revelation. So now we get to Nia, which means purpose. Baha'u'llah says in our daily obligatory prayer, I bear witness, O my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. So Baha'is understand that our first and foremost purpose is to turn towards God, to know God, and to worship God. But as we just talked about moments ago, this worship can also include the work that we do. Baha'u'llah also said, O people of God, do not busy yourselves in your own concerns. Let your thoughts be fixed upon that which will rehabilitate the fortunes of mankind and sanctify the hearts and souls of men. This can best be achieved through pure and holy deeds, through a virtuous life and a goodly behavior. He also said the fundamental purpose animating the faith of God and his religion is to safeguard the interests and promote the unity of the human race and to foster the spirit of love and fellowship amongst men. So you see here that the idea is not only that we are supposed to collectively recognize our unity now, but we all have a purpose in helping the world realize that unity and to create a well-functioning society in which everyone's needs are met, in which we are safeguarding the interests and promoting the unity of the human race. We're fostering a spirit of love and fellowship. We're rehabilitating the fortunes of mankind, recognizing the profound forms of suffering and unwellness that go on in the world and that are characteristic of this period in human history before we achieve and fully recognize our unity. So that gives us a sense, a profound sense of our purpose. And finally, we get to Kumbha, actually not finally, but almost finally, we get to Kumbha, creativity. Baha'u'llah says, in this day, the sun of craftsmanship shineth above the horizon of the Occident, and the river of arts is flowing out to the sea of that region. We heard that quote as well, but you notice, please closely, that craftsmanship and arts are aspects of creativity. So this quote serves double duty. He also said, arts, crafts, and sciences uplift the world of being and are conducive to its exaltation. Knowledge is as wings to man's life and a ladder for his ascent. Its acquisition is incumbent upon everyone. Now, this quote alludes to something that I didn't quote directly, but an important principle in the Baha'i faith, and that is universal education, meaning that every person on earth has a right to education, and that universal education is one of the chief methods of elevating the well-being of humanity. And so when we have education, not only do we get general knowledge, we also learn arts, crafts, and sciences with which we can uplift the world of being. He also said, we verily have made music as a ladder for your souls, a means whereby they may be lifted up unto the realm on high. Music is just one more expression of creativity. It is certainly not the only one. There are many arts, many forms of creativity. Music is one of them, which Baha'u'llah has expressly talked about in terms of its ability to contribute to spiritual upliftment of people. So I believe this is a strong support for Kumbha. All right, so we get to Imani, faith. Baha'u'llah said the essence of faith is fewness of words and abundance of deeds. There's a great importance in the Baha'i faith placed on living and practicing your words, your beliefs, your principles. And we talk about the importance of having your deeds not contradict your words, but in fact, live them out. He also said that when the victory arriveth, every man shall profess himself as a believer and shall hasten to the shelter of God's faith. Happy are they who in the days of world encompassing trials have stood fast in the cause and refused to swerve from its truth. And then the last quote that I'm going to share here in this section is, it is incumbent upon thee to summon the people under all conditions to whatever will cause them to show forth spiritual characteristics and goodly deeds, so that all may become aware of that which is the cause of human upliftment, and may with the utmost endeavor direct themselves towards the most sublime station and the pinnacle of glory. So faith is meant to have a purpose also. We express our faith through deeds, but we also utilize our faith to help uplift all human beings, to help contribute to the realization of the unity of the human race, and to help all people move towards what is highest and best for them. So, having shared those reflections about the 7 principles of Kwanza through the lens of Baha'u'llah's writings, I just want to share one quote about how Baha'u'llah specifically referenced Black people, whom he referred to as the people of the eye. And this is his son Abdu'l-Baha quoting, saying that Baha'u'llah once compared the colored people to the Black pupil of the eye surrounded by the white. In this Black pupil is seen the reflection of that which is before it, and through it the light of spirit shineth forth. Now, if you notice this colored language, this tells you the time when this quote was written in the early 1900s, when that was still the prevalent form of language. And Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah both came from Persia, so their language was the Persian language. But when Abdu'l-Baha came to the United States, he shared this viewpoint, and it began the understanding in the Baha'i faith that racial equality and the unity of all people and the putting aside of all forms of racial injustice and racial prejudice and racial discrimination were part and parcel of the Baha'i faith. And the idea is that Baha'u'llah was also saying that the Black people of the eye, or the people of African descent, have a special attribute, which is the ability to shine the light of the spirit forth into humanity. And so this is a role and understanding that we can expand when we think about African worldview and what is able to contribute to world discourse. And that's something that I hoped that we would have a chance to discuss this evening. Now I'm coming close to the end, and before I return to those questions that I wanted us to consider before, I just want to show you some of the Baha'i temples around the world. Since we're on the topic of Africanity, some of them are in Africa, but they are in also other places. So I will show you, hopefully you can see my pointer, but I'm gonna start in the upper left and then just work my way across. This one, let's see, there's my pointer. This one is in Chile. This is a very new Baha'i temple that was just erected a couple of years ago. All of these temples have 9 doors and 9 entrances, 9 pathways, 9 sides, because 9 is a number of unity in the Baha'i faith. The one just next to it is in Uganda, and I had the privilege of visiting this temple the very first time I went to Africa, because Uganda was the first country I went to. And this temple is the first place I visited. I didn't know I was going to have the chance, but we were driving by and I asked the driver if I could stop and take a look, and it was a wonderful visit. This is a new temple that's being built in Kenya. It's not even finished. This is an artist's rendering, but they're building it right now. This is another one in a rural area of India that's being newly built now. This is all the way on the right on the top is one that's being built in the Democratic Republic of Congo as we speak. This is the Baha'i temple in Wilmette, Illinois, one of the oldest Baha'i temples in the world and one of the largest as well. This one is in Australia. The one in the middle on the right here is in India. And interestingly, this is the most visited tourist site in the world, according to statistics, shaped like a lotus flower, but also has that same design of 9 doors, 9 sides, and they all have domes at the top. This temple,
Either one of us tap that.
I think this, I'm trying to remember where this one is. I think this one is in the Pacific, but I can't remember the exact country where it is. But the one next to it, this one is in Cambodia. This one is Panama. This one is Samoa. And this one is Germany. This one all the way over here is also one of the newer ones. And I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly
I think that might be Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea, that's right.
Yes.
That's the one. I knew it was in the Pacific, but I couldn't remember exactly where it was. So I just wanted to show those so that people could get a feeling of some of the houses of worship. These houses of worship are open to people of all faiths. Their purpose is to bring people together and to elevate the devotional character of the communities where they exist. And they are also in the future will be connected to various kinds of social services to help the community. So that's just something that the Baha'is all over the world are building in different communities. All right, so at this point, I'm going to return to the questions for discussion, and then I'm going to jump out of the screen share and back into our seeing each other. So again, after thinking about what we talked about tonight, what would be different about the world today if African culture was the foundation of global society? Also, what does the world have to gain by learning more about African worldview and culture? And we might ask ourselves why it isn't more visible and why we don't learn more about it, particularly if we are not of African descent. Third, how is African culture and worldview consistent with the revelation of Baha'u'llah? We just touched the tip of the iceberg by going through the 7 principles of Kwanza and pulling some of Baha'u'llah's quotes about those different principles, but there's much more. There's deeper we could go with this. And then the last question is, how might African culture and worldview help advance the cause of Baha'u'llah? And when you ask yourself, what is the cause of Baha'u'llah, particularly if this is the first time you're hearing about it, the first part of that is just bringing humankind to the consciousness of its unity and moving us towards a society where we're actually focusing on the well-being of humankind. So, you know, there are things that will come from that, but that's step one right now. And we have so many opportunities with all of the global challenges that we're facing. We have opportunities to discover that unity and work together. So that's something that I want us to think about. All right, so I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to come back in, and then we can just open up the discussion at this point, however you want to do it, Sherlyn.
All right, thank you. Friends, you know, I mean, this was just a phenomenal presentation. Thank you so much. Now, I've just opened the chat up again, or asked Nason to open it up. We have 94 participants, so that means I can't see everyone that's got a hand up or waving a hand. So I'm going to ask you if you have, and I also don't see the little hand things that you can do, all right? And not everyone is able to do those. So if you have a question or a comment, please put it in the chat, and we'll just go through the chat log. I'll read them out to Laylee, and we'll go from there. We did have a comment that came directly to me earlier, which said, I need those slides. Are they going to be available to folks?
I guess so. I think are they in the recording, or do I need to send them separately?
No, because you sent them to me already. So I can share them if I have your permission to do so.
Yes, I updated them slightly, so I'll send you a new version.
Okay, yeah. That would be wonderful. Great. Okay, let's see. Will you be sharing how people can access the recording later? Yes, I will. Thank you, Winnie, for reminding me about that. Those of us that are on the email list for this series, you will get an email telling you that this recording is now available on our YouTube channel. We try to turn that around within a week. It's a process, you know, where Nathan has to download it and convert it, and then he sends it to me, and then I get it up on YouTube. So if you're not on our email list, please put your name and your or just your email address. Your name will automatically show up. Just add your email address and your city and state in there, and then you will go on our list. Okay. Let's see, may I please have a copy of the 7 principal slides also? Yes, Julia, the slides will go out to everyone that's on our email list. Super easy, get on the list if you want anything. Let's see here, okay. So Laylee, could you talk a little bit more? One thing that really fascinated me about this study group that I was with, that Layli conducted, was it really opened up my eyes to Africanity. And I was just amazed to see these deep spiritual principles put in action, that as a Baha'i I know about, but had no idea that they were already there in the African community, and likewise in most indigenous communities for that matter. You see some of this in many of them, community, calling and recognizing your ancestors. And perhaps could you speak a little bit more about calling in the ancestors and just its significance both in Africanity and in the Baha'i faith? Could you talk about that a little more, please, Layli?
Sure, I'm happy to speak to that. One of the things that we know both from the writings of Baha'u'llah, as well as from the African worldview, as well as you mentioned, Sherlyn, from many indigenous worldviews, is that, we even know it from quantum physics, reality is multi-layered. All right, reality is multi-layered. So we're living in kind of one stream of reality. There are other sites or streams or places or levels, there's different ways you want to talk about it, but reality is a multiplex thing. And Baha'u'llah talks, for example, about heaven and earth. That's not just a metaphor or an abstract concept on paper. It's actually a discussion about different sectors of reality, right? And so when we talk about the ancestors, those are people who have gone from one section of reality to another section of reality. And, they still exist, and they are on their path. There's a Baha'i song that talks about, we all come from God and unto him do we return. The idea is that we all gained existence when we were created by the Creator. And we go through that experience through all the worlds of God, including this being one of them, until we ultimately finish that journey and return to the Creator. That journey has a lot of vicissitudes along it. We don't know all. I mean, imagine one of our realities is when we live in the womb. Before we're born into this world, we are formed out of a little germ into a person that then leaves the world of the womb and comes forth into this one. And when we are in the womb, if somebody comes and, touches your mother's stomach, you feel it. You're a little, if inside there, you are aware that something's out there beyond your realm. You can't quite see it. You don't quite know what it is. You hear your mother's voice, you hear her heartbeat, there's something there, but you can't quite make sense of it. And then you come out and you see it and you're like, wow, that's my mom's heartbeat, my mom's voice, my mom's friend, my dad, whatever. It's the same with us now. We are in gestation for another world of God that we will enter when we pass out of this body into what is called death, but then move into the next life. And so when we're talking about ancestors and we're talking about them still being with us, we're acknowledging that they've been born into another realm, just like a baby has been born into this world. They are there. There's an understanding that they're aware of us and that we can be aware of them and that we can communicate with them and that they can communicate with us, and that we should also, as you mentioned, pray on their behalf to advance them, on that next leg of their journey. And that our prayers matter. They aren't just words that we say. They are actually energetic acts. It goes back to the power of the word that I mentioned before, that when we speak things, even when we think things, we are pushing energies into existence. We are performing a creative function that reflects our reflection of God. God created us in God's image, and we have certain attributes that reflect that, and our ability to use the creative word to move energy is one of those, which is why the words we use are important, what we say, the kind of language, and not just the words, but the spirit, the feeling, the intention that travels on those words. So we shouldn't be careless about those things. And that is a principle that is also found very strongly in African worldview.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. One question is, good evening and thank you for this presentation. do you have additional information about the secret society of women in the African culture? I'm assuming they mean the Mende culture because African culture is pretty big.
Right.
So,
Right. You know, that's an interesting question because there is a lot of information and then there's a lot of non-information. These societies, which sometimes scholars use the word sodalities instead of secret societies, because secret society has a kind of implication in Western culture that is not always great. But the idea is that they are sodalities, meaning groups of people who are convened for a specific purpose and who have a certain code that they abide by. The idea, and this book that I put up on the screen, the book that you know, Radiance from the Waters, really goes in depth about some aspects of the women's sodality known as the Sandy Society. The Sandy Society is a big society in West Africa. And its original purpose, as I understand it, was to school girls into women. So girls would learn how to become women, but not just women, but functioning members of society who are fulfilling their part of the equation of holding society together. All right, so people would learn some very practical things in there, like how to do various jobs that you need to do as an adult woman. For example, jobs in the home or jobs in the marketplace, or, you know, leadership roles in the women's political structure, etc. But women would also learn things that we as Baha'is would call virtues. You know, there are a number of virtues that were understood to represent the ideal person, and people would be trained in those virtues. They also learned songs and dances and art forms. So it was a very holistic kind of education that was designed to help people, young people, grow into the kind of person that would be best for society. At least that's the idea as I understand it. Now, there are aspects of what they did that are considered not to be shared with people outside that group. So I won't go into that, nor do I even know that much about that part. But the understanding is that, you know, it would be sort of a violation of them to put those kinds of things out into a discussion.
right. You know, that brings up a related question, if I may. Perhaps conservative or uninformed notions about gender relationships in most African societies may not attribute an equality between men and women, such as what we believe, or, you know, as Baha'is and what we see here in the US, although it, you know, still lots of room for growth. So do you, with your travels to Africa and your close connections with the communities there, what do you see? Do you see any differences between the African Baha'i communities and the African community, or let me say Sierra Leone, or you know, specifically, or wherever it is that you've traveled?
Yes, I haven't been able to meet with Baha'is in every community that I've gone to, but in some I have. And I think that, you know, let me just make a few prefatory comments. For one thing, in many African societies, the notion of the relationship between genders is characterized by diarchy, which means both have equal but different power.
Okay.
All right. So that's a different kind of concept than the often Western concept of men up, women down.
Right.
That's a hierarchy. But diarchy is women have one kind of power, men have another kind of power. For society to function, they both have to be doing their thing in complementary fashion. All right. Now, granted, that doesn't always get executed perfectly in societies. And it's fair to say two things. One, that colonization and the introduction of Western hierarchical attitudes did upset the apple cart of some of the original ideas. It's also fair to say that sometimes those original ideas were more ideals than what was actually done in practice. So, you know, there's heterogeneity there. But but it's important to understand that the different foundational concept. If you start with a foundational concept that men and women are both equal and necessary, even if they are different, that they both contribute something essential to the well-being of society, then you have a different foundation. Now, obviously, Baha'u'llah teaches about men and women being the wings of a bird, and if one of the wings is weaker than the other, then the bird can't fly. You know, that's the metaphor that's often raised. You know, and I've seen people to also expand that metaphor to include diverse gender spectrum. But the idea is that that part of unity and justice is gender equality. And so Baha'is everywhere, all over the world, are reading the reality of their local area and trying to figure out what is needed to bring people closer to the ideal of gender equality.
Okay, thank you. Next, it's a comment, but I think it's a question too. I'm struck by the use of the term Africanity. Could you talk about that and how that's evolved and its appropriate use?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good question. It can be hard to find a word that refers to Africanness and African worldview outside the discourse of racism per se. And so Africanity is really about those cultural and worldview aspects of people of African descent. It's about, you know, carrying and perpetuating or holding those viewpoints and reproducing them in the world, sometimes in ways that are new, sometimes in ways that are old, but it's really a word that's meant to encapsulate the more positive aspects of African descendedness and to leave out the parts that have to do with race, racism, et cetera. It's a different discourse.
Thank you. Okay, our next comment here. Bravo, clap, 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 a wonderful presentation. This is from Weke, she's originally from Kenya. Truly inspired to share the co-relationship between the Baha'i teachings and the Kingdom of Wakanda and Africanism with both my Baha'i friends and the Friends of the Faith. From Sharon, this is so powerful and it resonates loudly with me. Thank you. Again from Weke, was so pleased to see the Kenyan House of Worship on your list. I have a personal connection to it.
Lucky you.
Vasu Mohan, wonderful presentation. Thank you. Alucine, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. In the next world, where our parents or forefathers or mothers, will they reunite? Alucine, would you like to come off mute and maybe clarify that question a little bit? Are we assuming that they are separated now or had or were before they passed on? We'll give her a minute to see if she's still here.
Yes. Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you so much. The presentation was wonderful. I'm from Sierra Leone originally. And I know the area where the Mende are in the southeast of the country. It's interesting when she was mentioning when you go into the next world, and my caution is, it's like you're coming from the womb, the baby in the womb doesn't know what's going on in this world, but you can get a feeling. So when we die, we go to the next world. Are we going to be reunited with our parents who are already in the next world? That's the question.
Thank you.
Right. I believe I understand that question. And I want to say it's both and, because on the one hand, we are still united with them even when they have passed on. But it's harder to recognize or feel that because we're in one realm where we're in a material reality. They're in another realm where they have gone to beyond the material reality. When we too enter the non-material reality, we will be able to recognize them and connect with them in a way that's harder now. But the connection is still there. You know, it's just like when the baby's in the womb is connected to the mother through the umbilical cord. When the baby comes out, The umbilical cord is cut, but there's still a
Right.
connection between mother and child. That doesn't go away. And so when our loved ones pass on, we are still connected to them, but we have different cognition about, each other. Like the baby in the womb is aware of the mother, but he can't see her face. The baby cannot really understand what the mother is doing or see it, but once the baby is born, the baby can see it. So it's these different kinds of relationship that we have at different points in our journey. But Baha'u'llah does talk about how we will be able to recognize not only our loved ones in our family, but other spirits with whom we are connected when we move into the next world.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think you're on mute, Charlene.
This is from Ormond, and he's the one that brought up, Africanity, and he said a little more later on. He says, as a Baha'i of African descent in my 60s, just haven't heard the phrase Africanity much at all. Sure have heard much more of other negative terms and phrases. The term has a positive implication and would serve well to be more included in Black and world culture.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that comment. I want to refer back to something that was in one of my graduate school classes, a Black psychology class that I took. And I really appreciated this teacher for pointing out the different approaches that different people have taken to understanding Black people and Black culture. He said, the worst point of view, but the one that's most common, is the deficit view. The idea that when people see difference between Black people and other people, they view that difference as a deficit and something being wrong with Black people. But then there's another viewpoint called deconstruction, where you are saying, okay, there's a difference. Let's understand why this difference is taking place. Let's not call one better than the other. Let's just explain why they're different. And then there's reconstruction view. The reconstruction view is taking a positive view and saying, okay, there's a difference, but what's positive about this? Where is it coming from? How is it its own thing? And how can we understand it on its own terms? And so when I'm talking about Africanity, it's that third one, it's that reconstruction. We're talking about it on its own terms. We're trying to understand the system with its own laws. In my own writings, I write about how when we're thinking about culture, we often don't even go deep enough, because we look at what people do and we say, oh, this is Black culture and that's Black culture. But what I want us to do is take it back to cosmology and ontology. I want you to take it back to our understandings of reality. What exists? How did it come into being? How are the parts of reality interrelated? And how do we relate to that? How do we know truth? How do we understand what truth is? Those kind of questions, that's the level at which we're talking when we're talking about worldview, is those axioms that we often don't even think about because they're so automatic. But we can stand back and look at them, and we can compare different worldviews and their understandings about reality. And that's part of what I wanted us to do tonight, to look at the African worldview and compare it to Baha'u'llah's worldview and look at the connections.
Thank you for sharing that phrase. That it's needed for all of us to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Welcome.
You're on mute, Cheryl.
Charlene, you're on mute.
Well, I said a whole lot too, doggone it. Jennifer Treadwell said that she's lived in Africa and would like to share some of her experience. And I'm asking Jennifer, if she does, if it would pertain to the questions that Laylee asked, so we stay on topic, because it would be wonderful to have some conversation specifically on those 3 or 4 points about the comparisons between the Baha'i faith and Africanity. Jennifer, what say you?
Yes, absolutely, to answer her questions, because those are such powerful questions. First of all, hello, Sherilyn, thank you for this space. Laylee, I'm blown away. This is so exciting. Sawubona, molweni, udadewethu mfowethu. I grew up in Transkei, Nelson Mandela's homeland, Madiba's homeland, for the first 21 years of my life. And Laylee, when you asked the question, what would be different about the world today if African culture was the foundation of global society, I was privileged to be raised by Mother Africa. So a question I was asked every morning was, what did you dream last night? It cultured the spiritual perception. The spiritual world is more quote unquote real than the physical one. But it's cultivated as a spiritual habit, but more than a habit, more of like a way of being. Just as an example, like, what did you dream last night? And then that sense of intuition is so highly connected that that's your primary form of communication with everybody and everything. I also wanted just to mention one more thing that one of my brothers, Molopo Molamed, said, that the spiritual nature of time, that in America, time is money, but in Africa, time is time. But it's more than that. Time is the way that we share our oneness together. So those are just some very few thoughts to express gratitude. There's so much more we could learn, but thank you. Thank you for this.
Good points. Thank you for
phenomenal
sharing those.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was wonderful. Let's see, who do we have here next? Okay, Katura Felix has a comment and a question. Okay.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Lady, awesome presentation. I just want to say that I read Layli's book and I would just encourage people to read it. About your question, Layli, in terms of what would be different, I mean, I think that for me, an African worldview where, you know, the spirit world is real, it is full, it's full of resources. You know, I feel like we try to address, let's say, living in the United States, you know, injustice from a material perspective. We try to dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. I feel like African worldview would be, you know, going beyond the master's tools. And in the spiritual world, you know, there are policies and there are entities, and that world is chock full of resources. So I just feel like it would be a different conversation as we move towards justice. We would have, we would be much more resourced and understand like the resources that are available to us as we tread the path of justice.
Thank you for that comment, Kay. As I'm sure you know, in my book, I talk about spiritual activism as an understanding about making change, political change, economic change, seeking justice, etc., in a way that draws on spiritual resources in a variety of ways. And understanding that doing the work of social justice is essentially the work of energy transformation. And so you have to understand how to transform energy. Those are tools you need to gain, they're understandings you need to develop, they're things you need to practice to get good at them. You know, for example, you know, if you just think about how much injustice is created because of hatred. Hatred is an emotional energy. It comes from somewhere, it goes somewhere. It can be transformed and intervened upon. But what kind of tools do you use to transform hatred into something else? You know, you have to think about it. And then you also have to think holistically. You know, if you're taking a human being who is filled with hate, you can't just go up to them and say, hate is bad, stop doing it. You know, you have to figure out, why did this person come into hate in the first place? What do they need right now to transform and transmute their energy? How can you support that change by scaffolding them with things that help keep a fragile change, make it stronger? And then you have to figure out what kind of world needs to also be there to receive this transformed being, you know, and what can you do as a steward of all of those changes? So that's the kind of energy work, you know. And when we're going back to some of the traditions of Africa, I mean, even referring to the Sandy Society, you're going to people who are learning to transform energy. And you're, when you know, become very learned in that kind of thing, you become a person that community people turn to because of your knowledge and power about how to transform energy and how to scaffold people through change. And so, you know, it's a different way of understanding how the work of change gets done.
That is a fascinating answer. And I can't wait. There's so many sections I'm going to go back and listen to again and again and again. And that is definitely one of them. That was so informative and powerful. among many others that I just haven't commented on. Let's see here. John has said, I know that global indigenous congresses have convened within the Baha'i faith. What do you know or can add to these gatherings, inclusive of future communings?
I mean, one of the things that I've been advocating for with the Baha'i convenings that I've been involved with is expanding our thinking about race to include African worldview and to use this understanding of African worldview to help us meet the race-related mandates of the Baha'i faith, which include things like racial amity, racial harmony, the eradication of racial prejudice, the creation of racial justice, and so on. Those are all things that Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, Shoghi Effendi, and the Universal House of Justice have asked us to do and achieve and have really held to our doing. So I'm always thinking, how can we do this even better? And I think one of the ways that we can do it better is to increase our understanding about African worldview and what the African peoples of the world, historically and at present, contribute to these discourses and to problem-solving ability of the human race. So, you know, convenings, I think, are trying a lot of different ideas. We're in a posture of learning, as we like to say, and I think that this is just part of the conversation. Sherlyn, unmute.
Thank you. I was on my way. From Sandy Osberger, how much effect does African worldview, and this might be directly related to your comments just now, how much effect does African worldview have on the people in the US of African descent?
Well, I'm of the belief that it has a great deal of impact because I'm of the belief, you know, some people have this idea that slavery and the slave trade destroyed African culture and sent Black people to the United States as blank slates. I don't buy that view. There's another view about residual Africanisms, which is the idea that people retained and reproduced many aspects of African worldview, even though they were in a new land, a new language, and under new conditions. And there are people who trace the many ways in which that took place. And so I hold to that view. Now, what I would also argue is that people of African descent in the United States and elsewhere have collectively been very traumatized by not only the slave trade and its residuals, but all the successive forms of systematic racial discrimination and violence that have occurred since that time. It is as though people have been trying to negate people of African descent, annihilate people of African descent, and erase the African worldview. And those things are very real. They are not just people's imagination. And so that having to fight that generation after generation after generation takes a toll on individuals, families, and communities. So we do in fact see the impacts of trauma at the same time as we see residual Africanisms as part of the survival strategy, part of the thriving strategy, and part of what generates the great contributions that people of African descent continue to make to world culture.
Muted again, Sherilyn.
Thank you. I was just mumbling to myself anyway, so saying, let me make sure I didn't lose myself in the chat log. Okay. Angel has said the connection in and between worlds is truly powerful. Thank you.
I agree.
John again asks, Eurocultural materialism has dominated and dwarfed spiritual maturity. Would you agree or expound, please?
I didn't hear the last part of that question. Can you say that again?
Okay. He's proposing that European culture, material European culture, has dominated and dwarfed the spiritual maturity of humanity. Would you agree or expound on that?
Yes, I would agree that that particular form of worldview has reached its end stage. And we are seeing it in auto-destruct stage.
Let's
But at the same time, I would argue that that worldview has made some very important contributions to world culture. There are a number of technological, scientific, humanistic contributions that that worldview has made over the arc of its existence. However, that worldview has also justified a great deal of inequality and violence in the world. So it's a very complex picture. But regardless, I believe that that worldview has reached the limits of its viability for the world population, which is why we are seeing a lot of things crash now. And I believe that the only escape from this is for us to discover the unity of the human race, a fact which exists, but which we have not yet acknowledged, and to recognize that we need to affirm the existential equality of all human beings, and we need to reject anything that interferes with the realization of well-being of individuals and communities, everyone on planet Earth.
Thank you very much. Diane Gritch said, extremely well explained. Thank you very much, Layli. Keturah, do you need to, okay, you're good? All right, great. Let's see here. This is from Winnie. She says, so much about the history of Africa has been suppressed by Eurocentricity. What you have shared certainly blows the idea of Africans being uncivilized out of the water. Do you have a book to recommend for people to learn the history that has been lost, strayed, or stolen? And Winnie, I'm going to ask if you're meaning a history book about African Americans or about Africans in that regard. It might be a different answer.
Well, I'm thinking particularly about, to learning about the kind of African worldview and civilizations that have existed there before colonialism went in and so forth. Like I say, the history that's lost, strayed, or stolen.
Gotcha.
There are a lot of books that I would recommend, and I'm trying to see, I have a slide of books that I have shared in different presentations. And so what I'm going to do.
Yeah, everyone will want it.
I'm going to, it's a photograph, so you're going to have to screenshot it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share. This is just some books from my own bookshelf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share this table full of books, and I just want you to take a picture of it and books, because these are just books that have personally influenced me that I've cited in my own writings. There are a bazillion other books. There are bazillions of books, but these are just some of the ones that I have found particularly helpful. So you got to start somewhere. So just take a picture of this and start reading some of these books. And what you will find is that there are common threads. You have to read more than one. You can't just read one. Once you start reading more than one, you start discerning a field of knowledge and information that is interconnected, and then it just grows and grows.
Right.
Can this be shared along with?
I can send it to Sherilyn with the other stuff, and that would be okay.
Yeah, and I did take a picture of it. I did take a screenshot. And as always, friends, if there are references that are shared that are substantive, related to the conversation, the topic, that will be included in the email about the recording. So you'll have a nice little package of anything that's been referenced. So if you're not on the email list,
Get on the email list.
Video list.
Yeah.
Okay. It's worth it. And sometimes I'll also share things directly from the chat too, because sometimes there are things that go on there that we don't get to talk about in here. But that's rarely the case though. This is from Analdo. When looking at the questions, one general answer to each question comes to me. It is the golden rule, that if the people of the world practice the true culture of Africa, meaning not influenced by materialism, of having true concern for each other, it would benefit the world, of wanting for our neighbor what we want for ourselves, to be loved, livelihood, and security. It would be for the betterment of the world, thereby establishing unity, fulfilling Baha'u'llah's mission by truly practicing the Golden Rule. Do you want to expand on that at all, Ronaldo? Or offer a question with your comment?
No, just no. I think it says it there. But if she is Laylee would like to comment, add to it as far as the golden rule, you know, the importance of it. You know, just by honoring that, which we know each religion has a version of the golden rule, and if we just practice it, you know, we would have this unity that I think is establishes in your questions.
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say, is that the golden rule does appear in so many different faith traditions, philosophical traditions, social traditions, and so on, that if we did universally exercise it, it would go a long way. I would add to that many cultures and traditions also add unique nuances on how to improve life. And so the more deeply we understand the great diversity of wisdom in the different traditions, the richer that experience becomes of making the world a better place. And so the golden rule is an excellent baseline because it appears in basically every tradition. And we have to figure out, why is it that people don't already execute on it all the time? What conditions do we need to create to evoke that in people and sustain that in people? And then add to it other forms of wisdom that we get when we go deeper into these diverse traditions.
Thank you so much. We are clicking along here, friends. Be patient. I've got 14 more messages in there that I haven't gotten to yet. So we're going right along. From Chuck, he says, I am moved by what appears to me to be some similarities of African and Native American cultures that they seem to have. In particular, the spiritual connection to the environment and the diarchy. And yet they're from two different continents. Would you like to speak on that, Laylee?
Sure. I think that there are many commonalities between African worldview, Native American worldview, indigenous worldviews from around the world. And one of the main commonalities is this sort of tripartite thing of the spirituality, community, and ecology, you know, and that those things are always kind of intertwined with each other. You know, so they, you know, what we really need is an elevation of all these discourses in world society. You know, we've endured centuries of their erasure, marginalization, suppression, and so on. Now is the time, and I think it would really help humanity to elevate these discourses, to spread them more, to make sure that everybody gets a chance to learn about them. You know, it's just something that we really need to do.
Yeah. Let's see here. From Sharon, that was a great question by Kay and fantastic answer by Laylee. Thank you, thank you, thank you both.
Thank you.
Let's see here. From Elizabeth, excellent program. Please add me to the list. From Sharon, how might gender norms change in the United States if a pre-colonial African worldview of spirituality and community were privileged over patriarchy and material culture?
That's a very cool question. You know, I think that just for starters, if you have an idea that every gender contributes something valuable and essential to the well-being of society, and you have structures in place for people to learn how to maximize that contribution to society, then that puts you on a different platform than a gender norm that understands one gender as the servant of the other. You know, and so I think that would have incredible ramifications if it was allowed to play out over time. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, because one of the questions that we are wrestling with in the United States and even some other places around the world today is a gender spectrum and gender fluidity and different ideas about gender beyond men and women. And we need to reconcile these different discourses with each other, and we're still very much in process on that.
Thank you. Okay, Kathy Sands had a question, and I think she says, I want to make us aware of counseling therapies which former racist group members can answer and create doubts in their former philosophies of current members. Kathy, could you come off mute and help clarify your comment or question there, please?
I really have appreciated the notion of Africanity that has been raised here, and in several groups, which are book studies for anti-racism, and aware also that I have a multiracial family, Black and white. I wanted to say that I've become aware of therapies that have been helpful for racist people, Black and white, who have been able to change their views when getting an emotional a spiritual emotional contact with what was most problematic for them in their past. I'm trying to say that we can make changes. I mean, all of us are learning how to become anti-racist, but there are many who are just clenched in trauma because of incidents in their past or the way they were raised or things that are very difficult to change. And they have to be dealt with at an emotional level in therapy rather than one of our beautiful scholastic endeavors here of conversation and discussion. It is more of a deeper problem for them that they have to become aware of themselves in order to release it. I wanted to tell you that that kind of therapy is becoming available now, and it will be, you know, spread and multiplied and etc. More than book studies and our community life. You know, we are all acting as family, but some of our family needs extra help. In the end, thank you. I really appreciate your
Thank you, Kathy. You know, I appreciate that you raised the importance of emotional factors in these transformations, because it's not just intellectual. It's not just about your beliefs and ideas. It's about how you feel deep down inside. It's about your automatic impulses and instincts. And it's about really reformatting yourself, you know, and it's not easy to do that work. And I want to point out that in addition to individual forms of therapy and different things, different means that individuals use for self-change, to use a word I've used over and over, that self-change has to be scaffolded by changes in the environment. You know, if you change yourself and you just jump back to the same environment, you're going to get triggered all over again to redo the thing that you just changed from and go back to your old ways. And so you have to ask yourself, what changes do we need to make in the environment, whether it's the close environments like our own home, family, or workplace, or whether it's the larger environments like what's on TV or what you see when you're driving down the street. You know, all of those things play a role. I take an ecosystem point of view about how we need to change things. We have to look at all the things in the ecosystem that are contributing to the negative thing that we're trying to get rid of, and we have to put interventions on each and every one of them. We have to transform each and every one of them. And so that very thorough kind of analysis of where the thing is coming from and how to make it stop is something we have to be doing constantly. And we all have to figure out, where can I show up to do that work? You know, because no one of us can change the whole ecosystem at once, but every single one of us can change part of the ecosystem. And so we have to always be conscious of that work and be doing it. So thank you for your share.
Thank you. From Sharon, she says, Dr. Mapayan, excellent presentation. Let's see here. A few more. From Anne Borak, did your grandmother and or your mother tell you any stories about how the faith protected them from racial toxicity? What a wonderful question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can say that for both my grandmother and my mother, their religion was the number one thing that protected and preserved them. And it did so in a few different ways. For one thing, both of them were most identified with their spiritual identity or their spiritual selves. And even though they were both strong in their Black identity and their other identities that they have, they recognized that ultimately they were spiritual beings and that this was the most important part of who they were. And when they held that firmly in mind and then felt that their strongest relationship was with God, with Christ, with Baha'u'llah, etc., that was like armor. You know, that was like, you know, no weapon formed against me can harm me. You know, that was, you know, that kind of thing. And so the faith that they both kept so strongly was the number one way that they did it. And they also both maintained an orientation towards personal virtue, that recognizing that being a good person is always appropriate, no matter what anybody else does to you or around you. You know, and neither of them was relenting on that. You know, my grandmother and my mother both were not vindictive people. They were not people who were easy to anger. They were not people who, you know, spoke ill of others. They were the type of people that were always looking for the good, even in people who weren't great, you know? And so it was really that spiritual orientation that was their armor against that racist and racial toxicity that you referred to.
Wonderful, thank you. Winnie says, I have a listing of the golden rule throughout history, not just religions, but Greek and Roman thinkers and other sources. I can pass it along if you think the group would be interested. I'm sure we all want that, Winnie. Yeah, why don't you email it to me and I'll make sure it goes out with the recording information and as a resource from this conversation. Thank you very much. Regina, my sister, says, where do we go to learn more about transformational energy?
Okay, some of those books on that table have some of that in there. But there are lots of other things as well. I will say this, that many of the world's spiritual, religious, and initiatic traditions have lots and lots of information about the transformation of energy. If you start on that path, that stuff will find you.
Yeah, it's true. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to take a short break here. It's 9:31. We still have some more questions and comments for Layli, but I know some of you need to leave at 9:30. So this is where I just like to tell everyone what's coming up ahead. Give Layli a few minutes to get some water or something. give her voice a rest. And I'm going to do a share screen here. Where is it? This one. Okay. So coming up in January, on January 9th, we're having Imasumak Marion Davis. She'll be talking about love, a force of transformation, and reflections on the Universal House of Justice's July 22nd letter. Brand new news on January 16th, we're adding in a session. January is going to be a 3-session month. You know, we usually just do two. It's the 2nd and the 4th. This will be the 3rd Saturday. Todd Ewing just confirmed that he's going to be available to speak with us. This will probably be his first presentation regarding the updated version of his book, Toward Oneness, in which he's added freedom from racial prejudice and the call for a distinctive contribution. He will also be available at that time to talk about the activities and the learnings from the DC Local Spiritual Assembly on issues of race, and his journey about writing this book and the importance of the plans from the Universal House of Justice and how we can enact through our community building work the transformation and the elimination of racial prejudice. And in particular, how important this is, especially for the African American Baha'i community and African Americans. So you got a heads up, an early heads up on that one. And then what will be our 3rd session will be Dr. Angelita Reyes, She's going to be talking about the pandemic as a portal to race, caste, and new approaches to constructive resilience. And she's an excellent speaker, just another wealth of knowledge. And that's going to be very, very exciting. I'll tell you about one last one, and that's our first one in February. And you'll get more information about this one in a separate email. It's going to be a praise and prayer devotional potlatch. A potlatch is a Native American, Northwest Native American tradition of exchanging gifts and goods. Okay, well, our gifts and our goods to be exchanged are going to be the devotional things that we're going to bring to this particular session. It's strictly devotional. It's calling all our relations from all nations, from all faiths, and all musical and recitation forms to come and share and bring your gifts for an immersive experience in the words of and the love of God. So you'll hear more about that and how to sign up for that. And that will be what we've got going on. So let's go back now. Thanks for taking a time out here for a minute to do that. Let me stop sharing my screen there. Okay, and of course you'll get all of that on email as usual. You'll also get the full presentation calendar. It's full up until May. We have one opening in April that's not filled yet, but people are lined up all the way up until May. And you'll also get that in an email. So you have that list available to you. You can put in your calendars. Okay, so let's go back to Laylee now. Laylee, do you want to share any thought or comment, before we go back to the questions and answers here, or the comments?
No, I'm good. Just keep going.
All right, let's keep going. Okay, let's see. I lost my place. Okay, sorry. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay. This is from Jerry. Hi, Jerry. How are you doing? She says, Kathy reminds me that there is also body work that affects held trauma relating to what is held in the fascia. And there are people working on intentionally releasing what is held to support other intentional environmental supports for transforming ourselves and our systems. Yes, we had a great presentation on that just a couple of weeks ago by Jillian Sturdivant, which focused on My Grandmother's Hands by Reza Menenkamp. Do you want to speak to that a little bit more, Laylee?
I completely agree. I mean, when you get into that sort of multidimensional ecosystem kind of view of change, you have to recognize that body is one of the aspects. People, at least in US culture, are so inclined to think everything is just your thoughts, your beliefs, you're done. But it's not. It's your thoughts, it's your feelings, it's your emotions, your body, it's your spirit, it's your environment, it's your relationships, it's all of that every time, every minute. So all those things have to be addressed. I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah. What aspects of Africanity would you say have survived into today's African American culture here in the United States? Anything stand out, or several that
Sure, yeah, definitely. Like, I think the group orientation, the sociality, the group connectedness kind of orientation is still very strong. Also, I think some of the notions about time. I sometimes have these funny conversations with friends who believe that punctuality is a virtue. And I say, in my culture, things begin when people show up. It's phenomenological time. It's sociocentric. It's people-centric. It's not clock-centric. People call it CP time, but it's really African phenomenological time. It's a different system of understanding time. So you still see that, in Africana cultures in the United States. There are also some things that are more kind of particular or granular. For example, linguists have traced grammatical formations in Black English that come from African languages. And in fact, some of those have, for example, verb tenses that don't even occur in English. So people will say, oh, you're using incorrect speech, but no, we're actually using a verb tense that doesn't occur in English, So those are some examples. There are many, many, many.
Yeah, the language is just fascinating, and there's a lot of great things on YouTube that you can further, educate yourself on about that. Let's see. Lately, this is from Judith. Lately, wouldn't you say that no culture on earth up to now has been perfect? There are always things that may have needed changing. The perfect culture would be the coming world that the Baha'i faith teaches, which will include all the good of all the world cultures and structured by the teachings of the manifestation of God for this day.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I share a similar point of view, and I understand that Baha'u'llah has invited us to create the perfect world culture that we are capable of, and he has given us a set of guidelines and principles to help us get there. And he's also created revealed institutions that safeguard movement in that direction, and has also affirmed our creativity in terms of evolving this world culture. So yes, I think we have a great opportunity ahead of us. It's very clear that we have to get through some very threatening conditions in the near term before we will make it there. And with regard to culture specifically, we have this understanding that will include all of the good of the world cultures, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to take any action. We do have to take action against the negation of Africana culture, because the modern era has been the story of the effort of attempt to negate Africana people and cultures, or to exploit them for the benefit of others. And so we do have to undo that structure, and we do have to protect Africana culture to move it forward into this new world culture. And that is part of why I'm so passionate about the topic of Africana worldview.
Yeah. And Judith went on to say, she probably typed it in right after she put the first comment in. She says, all the goodness of the African indigenous cultures will be preserved in this world culture.
Yeah, we have, but that requires our effort. It requires our taking action, so we do have to take action to assist that process.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Is that it? All right. I don't have any more questions, and I hope I got everyone in the chat room. And we're still at 60, so I can't see everyone in one screen. Lately, if you would, I don't know how familiar our participants are, or all of us are, with the notion of modernity. Exactly what that means. You hear that thrown around a lot. But if you could elaborate on that a little bit, because many aspects that we've spoken about, the materialism and such, that's part of modernity, but also contrast it with what it is that the Baha'i community is working to build as an alternative to modernity, or to the construct of modernity.
Right. Well, modernity is both a period of time and a set of conditions or attributes. It's a period of time that basically spans the time after the Enlightenment and the sort of beginning of global exploration out of Europe, and takes us up to the present time. And it was characterized by the rising global dominance of Europe. And it is characterized by scientific and technological innovation. It was characterized by the evolution of a world system built on racial hierarchy. And it was also characterized by the systematization of certain forms of violence that are affiliated with those hierarchies, both racial, gender, it's an idea about organizing human beings into categories and then putting those categories into hierarchies, and then organizing society so that people at the top of the hierarchy have a different experience than people at the bottom or the middle of the hierarchy. And so that system is against reality, because human beings are existentially equal. And so it's falling apart now, but it's lasted for centuries, 400 or 500 years. I mean, it's 400, 500, 600, it's a long situation. And so, Baha'u'llah doesn't mark time using that system. Although Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, Shoghi Effendi, and the Universal House of Justice, who are the authorities of the Baha'i faith, have in fact addressed various aspects of those the attributes and things that occurred during that time span, you know, and Baha'u'llah said unequivocally that humanity has reached the stage where the conscious realization of its unity is possible and necessary. And he has come to alert us to that fact and to give us some things that will help us do it. And, you know, Baha'u'llah basically says that once you achieve this, a whole bunch of other things will become possible. That's why that whole 500,000 year thing, he's initiating a new cycle in human history, a new long cycle in human history. It's not that the Baha'i faith will be the main religion during all that period. You know, he says that, you know, we'll continue to get divine manifestations of God every 1,000 years or so to renew, because as humanity evolves, humanity needs new guidance from God. But we will be evolving in kinds of ways that we can't imagine now. I mean, go back to the beginning of Homo sapiens and try to imagine us now. You know, they can't imagine us now.
Yeah.
Just like we can't imagine ourselves 100,000 years from now. We can scarcely imagine ourselves 2,000 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to trust that this process is in play and do our best to aspire towards and intentionally work towards the achievement of what we know is our highest promise as beings.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let's see here. This is from Anne. She says, right now, as I look out on the social landscape, it seems to me that the Black community, through Black businesses and Black churches, have so much to teach us about living in love in unity.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to expound on that, Anne? Anything in particular, or particular ways in which you see that expressed in Black churches and Black businesses?
Yes, I think that the Black businesses provide mentoring for young Blacks. And if you go to any city, for instance, Washington, D.C., and you see the problems there with the unemployed youth and the crime rate and what have you, the ones that actually belong to a community, a church that has people in the church that have their own businesses and they all kind of work together, it's very admirable. I'll never forget when I went to my 50th class reunion. It was a class of about 400 people, and there were not that many African Americans, but there were maybe 50, and they all kept in touch with each other. It was amazing. They were sitting at 2 or 3 tables. They all were, hugging each other and just in their own little world, and they were like a family. And then the other, the white people, myself included, we were all at our separate tables, sitting with our friends and what have you. But there was something electric about those African Americans, that they just really loved each other, and they were so glad to see each other, and it was like a family. And I envied them, and I thought, gee, I wish I was sitting over with them. It was just, you could feel the love. So, I think we have so much to learn from the Black community. And I think that they take their, this feeling of cohesion and support and love. I think it comes from their African background. And I'm really thinking about it tonight, listening to Layli talk about this. And I also have lived in Africa, and the one thing I remember most about Africa, living in East Africa, not West Africa, was the warmth of the people, and the way they just accepted you for what you were. And when I ended up leaving and coming back to the States, it was the hardest thing I ever did, because I had to go and tell everybody I was leaving. And they all wanted to know why. Did they do something to offend me or whatever? And no, I'd been there for 2.5 years. I just needed to go back and reconnect with my own family and what have you. But yes, there's definitely a sense of community in many Black communities, even though some of them have been scattered through, the racial inequality and the disadvantages and what have you. But where it's successful, it's wonderful. It's like looking to the future, what things can be like, as far as I'm concerned. I think they've got the secret, to be honest with you. Yes. And I think that many Black communities are working to get back to that place.
And the white community?
What about my white community?
Yeah, the white, what are they working towards? Do you see a path for the white community to learn some of these?
No, I'm you know, I haven't seen that much in the white community. I'm a retired teacher, and so my last teaching job was English as a second language. So I had students from all over the world, and I certainly learned a lot from my students. But I see the white community as being too individualistic at this point in time, and that may be a bad generalization, because it's not. I do have one neighbor who's a wonderful Christian, and she's a wonderful neighbor. But she goes to a very small church. And I think what happens is people go to large churches, or they don't go to church at all. And so they just naturally gravitate to be separate, you know. But I think there's a real effort on the part of the Black community in many cases where they make a real effort to come together, and they all depend on each other. And it's wonderful. I think it's great. And we can learn a lot from them. Yes.
I think that with regard to the first part of what you said about what you observed at the reunion is like the convergence of two different conditions. One is the foundational orientation towards community that already comes from Africanity and African worldview. But the other part is the survival mechanisms that the African American community has had to devise in the United States. If you go back to, you know, the second half of the 1800s, after the Emancipation Proclamation, you have the African American community cast into a realm in which they had to create all their own institutions to get their needs met in society, because the institutions that already existed, created by white people, did not accept or receive and take care of them, generally speaking. And so you saw the development of this culture of mutual aid. That mutual aid was a survival mechanism, but it was possible in part because of the foundational belief in community and kinship that was already there out of African worldview. You know, but thinking about the second part of your statement, when Sherlyn asked you about the white community and what they're doing and what they're experiencing, it reminds me of the writings of a particular social theorist whose work I've read, by the name of Chela Sandoval. And one of the arguments that she made, what we're experiencing right now, is something that she called the democratization of vulnerability. And she said that because the you know, sort of Euro materialist system is disintegrating, is causing traumatic conditions that are deeply affecting white communities. And white communities are now beginning to experience what people of color have experienced all throughout modernity. And people of color, because of having experienced it for so many centuries, sort of became experts on how to deal with it. But for white people, it's more new because they were protected by privilege before. But with the traumatic conditions really gaining momentum, fewer and fewer white people can escape it. We see that in the United States right now with the COVID pandemic. We see how many white people have lost jobs, how many white people don't have the economic security that they took for granted previously, and how many people are having to show up in food lines when they never thought they would have to do that. And so, you know, it's causing a shift in the consciousness of the entire population, and it's creating new opportunities for us to learn from each other and to grow together towards unity. So we have to look at these conditions, as horrific as they are, as being really urgent learning opportunities for people of all backgrounds to figure out how to live out a common kinship and a common orientation toward one another's well-being.
That's very hopeful. And yes, now is the time, right, to move in that direction.
We have to, otherwise we lose too many of us.
Absolutely. Well, we can, hopefully we can all do it together.
Indeed.
Cheryl, you're on mute again.
Thank you, Milton. Milton always has my back. Milton has been here at every single one from the first one up until now. So thank you, Milton. In fact, one of the friends said it wouldn't be the Racial Healing, Racial Justice Series without Milton being there. Anissa said that this is so beautiful. And Ormond, who's had to leave, he said, Dr. Laley has elevated each of us in our understanding of the importance of Africanity being incorporated in our learning as a developing world civilization, its relevance in bringing the Baha'i faith to critical masses of humanity. Love to you and all the friends. Let's see here. Okay, from Mehran. He says, most of our issues have started with our lack of spirituality and envy of the spirituality of indigenous and African communities of the world. Here are some of the white community members that are trying. Okay, would you like to speak to that a little bit, Mehran? I understand you to say that in this forum, you're seeing, white community members trying to understand their spirituality better.
Sorry, we kind of had disappeared from the screen for a while.
Yeah. Oh, there you are. Yes.
First of all, I was going to thank all of you for this wonderful program. And I am a she, believe it or not. My parents decided to name me Mehran. That is what it is. So, I wanted to thank you first. And I know that I've been learning, and it's been a wonderful learning process for me. I know my husband is learning, and he is white. So we are learning that without our African family and without our indigenous friends, we would not be here, because they are the epitome of resilience and epitome of strength and light and glory. So when I look at that, I say we are learning. And every time I listen to friends here on this program, I'm elevated one more step. So thank you very much. That's what I mean. And when I'm saying my husband, and I'm listening to Anne Borak, am I saying it correct? The way she was expressing in the middle of what I was saying, I realized here she is an example. I see the Baha'i friends online and how they're expressing their love, and they're learning. So yeah, we are learning. I think there is hope.
Thank you. It's a hopeful message.
Thank you, Mehran. Yeah, that is actually one of the primary purposes of this series, which is to bring about racial healing and racial justice. And that involves all of us, of all faith traditions, of all backgrounds. And that's exactly what the space is for, to further understanding the spiritual aspects of that, means of action, personal transformation, what we Baha'is refer to as a twofold moral purpose, to work on ourselves, to develop our virtues, our spiritual qualities, and then in whatever our capacity allows at that moment, then to take those learnings and to become a brighter light in society and to be of service to the community and to society. So I personally am very, very grateful to have this opportunity. This is my joy. And this is my humble service by, offering this forum with the support of my local Baha'i community. So thank you very much.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, you may.
I'm making this public. I believe that Dr. Laley's parents were this possibly the spiritual parents of my husband.
Oh,
So we chatted a little bit privately that
okay.
they were neighbors. So
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, my father's parents lived in Portage for a real long time. My father lived there for a period of time. My family is all from Wisconsin. I still have so many Wisconsin family. And my parents got married in the Baha'i House of Worship in Wilmette. And before that, they traveled up to Portage to get consent from my father's parents. So yeah, there's that connection.
Oh, wow.
Small world. Because Portage is a small town, you know, so it's cool to meet someone connected.
here he is. He is hiding over here.
Hi, how wonderful.
There's Rick.
Nice to meet you.
That's wonderful. We have a triple Wisconsin connection. I'm sure there are a few others. Sue Manners is here from Wisconsin.
Wow, nice.
I was in Wisconsin for a dozen years before moving out here, and I'm getting ready to go back soon.
Wow.
And early next year, so Madison. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the heartland. A lot happens there. That's awesome. Also, Dr. Angelita Reyes, she also has a Wisconsin connection as well. So yeah, there's something about Wisconsin. Thank you so much, Mayron and Rick. It's good to see you again. Let's see here. Gretchen said it was her first time here. Wow. And she's so glad that she came. Please join our email list, Gretchen, so you won't miss anything. Thank you. From Mermush Watson, she says, thank you so very much for such a thoughtful and thought-provoking presentation and discussion. Our community needs many such conversations. Thank you. Ronaldo, his first time also, and he enjoyed it. Comment question from Sharon. In the book, Slave Religion, The Invisible Institution in the Antebellum South, researcher Albert Rabateau offers critical insight on how our enslaved ancestors retained much of their African rituals and heritages to include unity in community as a means of enduring slavery and maintain connections to their deities. Thank you for that book reference, and we'll include that with the information that goes out. Let's see. Oh, another Wisconsin connection. Judith. I knew I was trying to place you, Judith. Her husband is from Wisconsin. They lived in Madison for years. That's why I knew your name. Winnie says they'll be happy to have you back in Wisconsin lately.
Okay.
And Nijan, okay, more Wisconsin people. They're popping out of the woodwork. Nancy and Jim Hansen are also in Wisconsin. Welcome, Wisconsin people. All right, friends. It's 1 minute after 10, which is just fine. I know, John, you wanted to make a comment to follow up on something that was stated earlier, John. And help me pronounce your last name, John. Please tell me how to pronounce it again.
Fetzik.
One more time.
Fetzik.
Fetzik. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Slovak, it means expert horseman or Cossack.
Ah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to expound a little bit. The information and the culture and the wisdom and the patience and the resilience that comes from our presentation tonight and Doctor is just invaluable. Growing up in a white culture, European grandparents, all from Europe, in a very close-knit extended family up until the late 60s. And yet I see the kind of perilous imbalance of this culture of really lacking a broader spirituality. And this comes, whether it be the environment, weaponry, war, even the imbalance of the economy. I could go on, but basically the beauty and truth of the indigenous cultures, including the Africanity, is something to me as just an imperative that has to be infused. I think spiritually, it is our vaccination And that is why I brought up the topic of some of these conferences that have happened, because whether it be the Maori, the Aboriginals, Native Americans, Africans, the Kogi of Colombia, this wisdom, this truth, I think there's such a perilous imbalance. It's such a dire, dire need for humanity. I was just wondering if you knew of these conferences that have happened, and if there's any strength or impetus from the Continental Counselors or the Universal House of Justice, because to me, it's such an integral and imperative part of our healing and of our unification, that this spirituality balance out the extreme materialism of the popular culture globally of English language and the economic system and all that.
In the United States, African Americans and Native Americans have been referred to as populations of special significance. That's one marker of, the attention that's been given by the Baha'i institutions to these populations and what they bring, or say what we bring. But also, I like to look at the way in which the institute process is set up in a way that really draws from the indigenous cultures of the world, because it's rooted in local small circles that build community capacity from the small to the large, and that mimics in some respects the very kind of expanding circles of inclusion that I talked about earlier in the presentation. It starts with a small group of people studying together and advancing together from book to book, learning skills, serving the community together, the focus on the local neighborhood, the village level, your own community, instead of doing all these grand, huge global things, but really starting where you are and starting with what you have, which has always been the kind of indigenous way. So, I think that understanding is not only built into the way that the Baha'i faith is building a global community and engineering social and economic change around the world, but it's also something that we are all learning from together. So there's just so much opportunity to build it into the process, and the process itself already reflects it.
Do you know Little Brave Beastin at all? Would it be appropriate to share contact information at some point? Because she is instrumental in some of these connections happening with the Baha'i faith within the indigenous community of North America. And I just see a spirit melding of value. Granted, yes, absolutely, the institute process globally, organically has to happen, like little pebbles in the ponds of purity. We have to have these ripples out, and that it has to happen. But same time too, I believe there can be some dynamic PowerPoints, that can be accentuated. So if it's okay with you, I will forward your contact information onto her.
That's
and
fine.
see what may come of it.
Sure, no, that'd be great, thank you.
Right. And I thank you so much for a beautiful presentation. My wife is patiently awaiting for me to join her. So thank you so much, and good night, everyone.
Thank you, John. And I would like her contact information also, because that is someone I would like to connect with as well. So I'd appreciate it.
It's done.
Thank you, John. Tell your wife we appreciate her letting us have you for a little longer.
Aloha, friends from Erie. I will sign out and say good night. Love to all.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful.
Aloha.
Okay, we still have some more folks in the chat. Milton, Booby. Come on,
yes, okay. No, you skipped over, and I was like, okay, she's just skipping me. There was a statement that I made because I had done research, and the Black Panther character and Kwanza were both born in 1966, the year of my birth, and I was just so happy that she made that connection. I love you, Laylee. Thank you so much.
Hey, it's a great connection. It just tells you what was going on in the world at that time.
Yes.
It's like, the world was on fire and people were making new connections, and it was a
that
very
love, that
authentic
spirit of
moment.
love that was here, that summer of love that lasted for a decade.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that to everyone's attention.
Yeah, the other thing was this great conjunction that happened on Monday. Wanted to know if it has any significance or relevance to where we are and what's going on, because I've got an idea from what they told us about moving from an earth age to an air age and how that will play into what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's so interesting because for people who follow astronomy or astrology, it was a very significant event because it was a type of conjunction that hasn't taken place for 800 years at that level, although it on a smaller level takes place every 20 years. And for the last 200 years, that series of conjunctions has been in earth signs, but it just started in the air sign of Aquarius. And, you know, people, there's in the culture, there's this thread about the age of Aquarius and what that means, you know, and everybody's got these ideas about the age of Aquarius. And this conjunction that just took place in the first degree of Aquarius, and the next 200 years of conjunctions will all be in air signs. And Aquarius in particular does rule the humankind as a whole, and technological innovation and groups in service of humanity and the world coming together. So, you know, one can only be hopeful that it's a marker of what we will achieve. It's not causative, but it is indicative of what we might be on the verge of ourselves. I would certainly love to say that 2020 is the year that humanity decided to consciously embrace its oneness and unity. So let's hope that's what it means.
I feel that, you know, as one of those in the collective body of the pupil of the eye who is in love with the fact that I can possess the capacity of a hollow reed. I see it coming. And I keep telling folks in all these gatherings that I see the entry by troops that Baha'u'llah made reference to coming really soon.
Well, it's the importance of groups. It's the importance of equality and freedom and liberation and revolution. But let it be a spiritual revolution. Let it be a revolution of unity, not a revolution of violence. Let us use our technology for good and not for evil. You know, these are the opportunities before us.
Wakanda forever.
Forever.
That's right.
If I could, I'd like to add something to that, you know, in the writings, it says for every physical manifestation, there's a spiritual reality. So when events like that happen, it makes me think that there is a physical reality, but it's a physical event. So it is for a spiritual reality behind it.
Right. Well, there's great synchronicity in the universe on many levels. Most events have many frequencies on which they manifest. And so being aware of those many frequencies is a valuable skill.
Yes, Martin and Layla and Renee.
Okay, got cut off there, I guess.
She muted herself.
Let's go back to the chat. And so glad you asked that, Milton, because that was just, yeah, what doesn't Laylee know about, okay? What can't she speak on? I'm telling you, she's a wonder. Honest to goodness, what a wonder. Oh, if I could have an nth of your brain or your knowledge. Wow, you are just amazing. And I love it. I just love it. I just love it. Okay, this one is from Amir. He says, is it possible that Maulana
Karenga,
thank you, used some of Baha'u'llah's ideas when creating Kwanza holiday in addition to the African and Jewish traditions?
I really don't know. That would be a great question to know. I really don't know the answer to that question, so I won't venture one.
Okay.
I can only hope so.
Okay, this one is from Bahia. She says, how do we celebrate the crucial contributions and spiritual strengths of the African diaspora and Africanity while also acknowledging the diversity and complexity of the African content and its descendants worldwide?
Well, that's one of the things that I loved about Black Panther, the movie, because they tried very hard to show the unity and diversity of the Black race. They showed that within Wakanda, there were many different tribes, many different kinds of Black people, each with their own distinctiveness. And, you know, often under conditions of racism, people who belong to a particular race are homogenized, and our differences are not seen, or they are erased purposely so that we can be objectified. And so part of what we have to do in this anti-racist work, this racial justice work, is we have to highlight the diversity that occurs within our own groupings, you know? And so it's a both and strategy. It's not an either or strategy. There is unity and there is diversity, and we, to best effect, we highlight them both, and we affirm and acknowledge them both.
On that point, let me ask you, I ran across a very provocative title in a magazine article, and it said, "There are no Black people in Africa." That makes you stop for a second.
Right.
What do you think about that? Could you talk about that, Layli?
Sure. I mean, you know, it's a true statement. Blackness was a creation of a particular mindset, in particular, a mindset associated with modernity, where there was already a drive to commodify and you know, commercialize certain human bodies. That is one of the facts of the systemic violence of modernity. And so, you know, if you go in Africa, everybody's a human being. You know, nobody's gonna say they're Black until somebody else raises that point. You know, it's interesting, you know, many of the African friends I have say that they're really thrown a curveball when they come to the United States and discover racism, because when you live in an all-Black country, you don't live that. You don't think of yourself that way. You don't think of the world that way. So, you know, we think America, you know, is the only way to think, but people around the world experience it very differently. So, yeah, it's a important point to really ponder.
Thank you. Let's see here. We have Winnie. She'd like to share a sweet story about Wakanda. Go ahead, Winnie.
Well, one of my many things I like to do is to go to the Renaissance Fair. And there was a sweet story that somebody told. She played the Queen at one of the fairs somewhere in the country. And there was a little Black girl who was there with her dad. And she just, you know, she didn't look like she was having a lot of fun. And the Queen tried to strike up a conversation. And the little girl says, "Well, I'm a princess." And the Queen says, "Oh, are you a princess of England? Are you a princess of Scotland?" And the girl just looked sad. Finally, she got a brain surgery. "Are you a princess from Wakanda?" And the girl's eyes just lit up. And the Queen called another one of her courtiers out of the conversation, said, "You must meet this young lady. She's a princess from Wakanda." Oh. And he played right into it beautifully. The dad was in tears because it made that little girl's day.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a sweet story.
It is a sweet story, and it shows the power of Wakanda to really make some people feel affirmed. It's just like when there's a Black first, like, you know, first Black president, first Black vice president, and the kids go, "That could be me now." So having Wakanda is another, that could be me. This is something I can align with. I see myself in, you know, the visual culture of the world around me. Those are important moments for young people. And that's why cultural representations are truly significant.
Okay, I skipped unintentionally. I skipped a question from Bradley and Dick Wright, where they write, "What are some of the best practices for using your presentation within and outside of the Baha'i community?" And we can open up this to everyone. This doesn't have to all be on Layli, okay? She's not the only one that could answer this question, but let's start with Layli. And then I see Milton's got his hand up.
You know, my hope is just that always people will advance their own education. Everything that I'm speaking about is something that I had to learn. I had some mentors along the way that got the ball rolling, but so much of this is learning you have to do outside school, literally and figuratively. So any person that feels inspired just to advance their own learning journey and to use anything that I might have mentioned to jumpstart themselves, that's really what it's all about, and share it with others. Because my goal is for African worldview, African culture, and African people to not be erased, to not be marginalized, to not be exploited, and rather to be welcomed and embraced as contributors to the evolution of the world society that Baha'u'llah has envisioned for us. And so, you know, let's all move together along that path.
Milton, you wanted
Yeah,
to say
I
something?
did. I just want to say to address that and what Bahi said, the reason why I asked you for those slides is because the fact that she connected the Kwanzaa principles and the writings of Baha'u'llah, it just is so timely, because I was talking to a young lady who I just met recently, and she's a single mother living in Newark, New Jersey, in the inner city, and she's had this spiritual awakening. She's, you know, ready. She's a seeker, and I've been talking to her, and she mentioned that this year was the first year she was going to really entertain the Kwanzaa holiday with her family, to make sure. She said she wasn't celebrating Christmas, as they were going to get involved in the Kwanzaa. And my mind had said that I need to find a way to get the writings in, and I know it had to be some kind of connection, but the fact that you put it together today, I was like, yeah, Baha'u'llah Pa, what? Are you kidding me? Is that the way you work? Thank you so much. So I was, you know, texting her throughout, and I meant to invite her to this, but I'm definitely going to share the recording with her so she can see it and share it, because she's a community activist. She's a young mother. She's working in a nonprofit. She's self-employed as an entrepreneur. She has a business, and she's just a dynamic personality. And I think if she has it, she'll be able to take what you've put together in those. You know, those are already memes going on my Instagram, whether you understand it or not. I'm trying to tell you. So thank you so much, ladies.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Milton.
Now we've reduced a number enough that I can finally see everybody on one screen. So we can go off the chat, wave at me, okay? And we can just be informal that way. Okay, Anne, were you just waving to practice, or you wanted to say something? You're on mute, I can't hear you. You're still on mute, there you go.
No, I'm just waving to say I'm still here, enjoying it. It's wonderful.
Okay, great. So if you want to make a comment, jump in on the conversation, just wave your hand so we can have a little bit of order and I can call on you. Was that you waving your hand, Lamont?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah,
okay,
that was
go
me.
ahead, Lamont.
How you ladies doing this evening, gentlemen? It was beautiful. It was mind blowing. You know, I appreciate the fact that you covered all bases. You know what I mean? And you didn't leave no room for error. And I just wanted to just let you know that that was beautifully presented, you know, and we most definitely needed a copy of that up here by St. Cloud, you know, St. Joe's, Minnesota. You know, my question is, you know, I have a lot of Somalian friends and stuff like that, and when a lot of this stuff was going on just recently, you know, in the communities, you know, they used to always tell me that they didn't know what racism was, you know. And when they first said it, I was kind of shocked, you know. I was kind of shocked when it first came about, you know. The first thing I thought was, what you mean you don't know what racism is? But where they come from, they the majority, you know, in their country, you know. So, yeah, this was very enlightening. I think a lot. This is something I think, you know, this is something I think you need to put on the internet for some of these schools, you know, and let some of these young kids get a whiff of it, you know, and the way you presented it, you know, it's, you know, you can't miss, you know, and, you know, yeah, it was beautiful. You know, I ain't gonna hold y'all up, but I'm still here. So, you know, I just want you to know that, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Lamont. I truly appreciate that compliment. And, you know, I do hope that young people get a hold of some of these ideas, because young people deserve to know about African worldview before they get to college, because sometimes you never hear about it in school until you get to college, you know, so it's nice for people to be able to start thinking about that sooner.
Yeah.
That's very true.
I
Thank
agree.
you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gallery view, so I'm sorry I'm jumping ahead. Thank you, Lamont. I'm glad to see you made it, and I need your email address so I can make sure you're on the list. I know you connected with John and Jerry.
Right.
Yeah, put your email in the chat if you can for me, okay?
Okay. If not, I'll make sure Jerry get it over there to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Wonderful to see you.
It's wonderful to see you.
Janine? And friends, Lately needs to leave at 10:30. We are able to stay past that if you want to continue the discussion, which often happens here. Nathan's open to it. He's the one that's got the on-off button for us. So I checked with him and he's willing to go a little later. I can stay until 11. Okay, I got an intensive tomorrow all day and then a facilitation after that. So Janie, please go ahead.
I so love this. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. When I was 12 years old, I was so disappointed because every year in elementary school, when I'd ask, are we going to talk about Africa? They said, oh yes, that's by the end of the year. And the end of the year always came and we never talked about Africa. And I don't know exactly why this is bringing tears to my eyes, but I felt I could have been born with any skin color. I didn't know why my skin was the color it is. I didn't feel like I had any culture, even though my grandparents were German and Polish, spoke those languages, but nobody else in the family did. And so in high school, I wanted to study junior high and high school. And again, never any information about Africa. And I was in the civil rights movement and underground newspapers and all sorts of things in the 60s. And I found the Baha'i faith and I told them that I wanted to go to Africa. And they were the very first people who thought that that was a great idea. Other people really discouraged me. And so I went to the most difficult university that I had ever experienced in Sierra Leone, in Freetown, Fourbe College. And I got the best education. It was because for several years, I just kept asking, how could I go? And even though I had no money, luckily a guidance counselor came back from Brazil. And when I said, people who are rich could go anywhere in the world to be educated. And if you truly want to be educated, you need to travel. And he said, well, you're right. And so I'll give you loans and scholarships. I was able to go. And one of the things that I learned was in Sierra Leone, people of many different tribes and backgrounds from treated everybody as if they were welcome. And I particularly met many people, I remember some from the Cameroons that I felt must be world travelers. And they said, no, this is how they were raised in their villages, that we treat everybody as important and we listen. And I felt that they were completely cosmopolitan, just incredibly amazing human beings. And so every pore of my being while I was there was open. I had the most powerful experiences of my life, making lots of mistakes as a white girl, in tribal cultures and city cultures that I knew nothing about. But the Baha'is at the national level, when I wrote to them and said, how should I teach the faith? They were so open. They weren't overly administrated. They just said, why are you asking us? You go teach the faith and then you report back. And I was like, oh my God, they're letting this ignorant white girl who knows nothing about cultures loose on their continent. And it was the most liberating experience because they already knew that we were a culture of learning. You know, they already knew that that the mistakes that this white girl was going to make were not going to hurt that bad, and something good would happen. And I made lots and lots of mistakes. You know, and I cried a lot. And I mean, but having every pore of my being open because of the colors, because of the people, I just want to say that everything that you've said has deep, real meaning that I wish we all could experience. And our African American cultures are so rich. You know, you don't have to travel all the way to Africa to experience it. But I was hoping that there would be, for some of us, one book that you might suggest about the African spiritual contributions, cultural contributions.
Thank you, Janine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. I really can relate to your story because I also grew up in schools that said at the end of the year, we'll study Africa, and then they never got around to it. And that happened in middle school, in high school, in college. And I think that it really created impetus in me to study myself and to seek that information out. You know, I can remember in high school when we were studying the Middle Ages in Europe, asking my teachers what was going on in Africa during the Middle Ages, because my father had a book on his shelf about the great empires of Africa, and they were corresponding to that time period. I knew something had happened, but the teachers never addressed it and couldn't answer my question. You know, and even in college, I took an honors year-long world history class at a historically Black college, and we spent only 1 week on Africa in that entire year. Wow. And that 1 week didn't do justice. Now, the year after I left, a new president created an Afro-diaspora course everybody had to take, so that changed. But when I was there, that was my experience. I also was a philosophy major, and I wanted to do my honors thesis on African philosophy, and my professor said, there is no such thing as African philosophy. African philosophy is an oxymoron. Now, this was not a Black professor, but this professor had that belief, and he did not allow me to do my thesis on that topic. You know, I subsequently discovered that African philosophy was alive and well, and I could have very well done a project on that, and my teacher just wasn't prepared to mention me on that topic. So those kind of frustrations sort of built up and probably created the passion that I have now for, you know, Africana worldview, Africana studies. It's been part of my career the entire time. In terms of a book that I would recommend about the contributions of African religion and spirituality, a favorite book of mine is an old classic book by John S. Mbidi, African Religions and Philosophy. That book was first published in 1969 and 1970, and it's a series of lectures that John Mbidi did on that topic. It's an easy read, it's very comprehensive, it's applicable to multiple African cultures, and there are a lot of examples, and the Baha'i faith is even mentioned in the book. So I would say start there and see where it leads.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Layli.
Yeah.
Friends, who's not on mute? Okay, I'd like to, as we say goodbye to Layli, she's going to zip off, and but I'd also like to welcome a new person here today that I see, Carlotta, and she was shaking her head about Mbuti's book. So Carlotta, would you like to shout out to Layli, or, you know, say a quick comment to her? I know you got here late, you said, but, you know, we'll give you the last word with Layli. And then the rest of us are going to still keep talking.
Well, I got here so late. I mean, I was a part of a Kwanza ceremony. I was a part of some Baha'i Zooms all day. And I'm with the Lansing Baha'i Assembly in Michigan. And I said, oh my gosh, I had it on my calendar, and I got here. I'm glad it was still going on when I got here, because I said it started at 7:30, it may be over, but I checked it anyway. And I caught the tail end of what you're saying, and it sounds like you're going to a really awesome place that I've never heard talked about in any Baha'i setting. I've been mostly in Lansing. I've spent some time in North Carolina with the Baha'is, and I've been a Baha'i since the 90s, because I said that I had said to my husband, rest his soul, before he passed 5 years ago, that early on, I said, there's got to be a faith that really unites people. This doesn't make sense that everybody in different faiths are avoiding each other. And when I first heard the word, I thought it was an island in the South Pacific. And then it took years later before I finally had a coworker say, Carlotta, I think I know something you'd be interested in. And, we spent months, learning before we declared. So all of this time, I've not heard this kind of conversation before. So I'm looking forward to being a part of it next time. I don't know, this is the first time I'm hooking into this, Layli. So are you doing this next year with us too? Or is this the end of you with us?
It's not the end, but I haven't had an invitation yet. So we'll see.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to next year's schedule yet. I'll be happy to talk with you about that later, Carlotta. So again, welcome. But again, we want to thank Layli for being here. I'm the facilitator moderator for the series, so I can fill you in. I figured hear how you found out about us, but we want to give this last couple of moments here.
Well, I just want to say that my husband has done all this research. He had 3,000 books in which we researched. He was reading all of what you're talking about and then some. Mm-hmm. And we connected with the Classical African Civilization Studies Group, and so I just can imagine where you can go with all of this. But I never got any of this in college.
Right. Thank you so much, Carlotta. We've got to let Layli.
Yeah, I understand. And I just hope that, we get a way to connect with what you're doing. I would like to have some access to where you are and what you're doing so I can connect.
Okay, we'll make that happen.
And since Carlotta just joined, I'd like to just invite Carlotta to watch her YouTube, and that Sherlyn, if you're on the list, she'll send you a YouTube of this whole program so you don't miss anything, Carlotta.
Right. Thank you, Bettina. Thank you. Okay, we'll cover that later, friends. I'd like to put Layli out of here. We can deal with those things in a few minutes, okay? So I'd like to give last words to Layli here. She has other commitments, and we don't want to misuse her precious time, and we've been so grateful for it. So Layli, final thoughts or?
I just want to say thank you, Sherlyn, for this invitation to give me this platform to talk about these subjects and to get into conversation with other people about it, because I'm still exploring all of this. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I feel passionate about, and I feel like it may be, Baha'u'llah gives all of us special gifts to share with the world and things that, we want to bring forth. And for me, this is something I care so deeply about and something that I love talking with people about. I'm thinking, while we were sitting here talking, I had a memory of, we started the presentation with my grandmother, Jane and Mary, right? And there was a story that my mother told me about her. She grew up in Locust Grove, Georgia, and there were no Black high schools in Locust Grove, Georgia in the early 20th century. And so she migrated to Atlanta to live with her half brother so that she could go to Washington High School in Atlanta, which was a famous Black high school there. And when she left high school, she kept her high school textbook for history, which was Carter G. Woodson's The Negro in Our History. And my mother said that when she was growing up, My grandmother only had 2 books, the Bible and Carter G. Woodson's The Negro in Our History. I was turning around trying to see if I could find the book on my shelf.
Yeah.
I have it. It's a big, thick, well-researched tome by Carter G. Woodson about the history of Black people from like prehistory to 1920. And you know, you would think that nobody knew, because you would think that people actually books didn't exist, but these books existed and the information has always been there. And, you know, those of us who feel like keepers of the flame try to make sure that these things continue and don't get erased. But it's, you know, it's work we have to do actively. It doesn't happen by itself. So again, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for everybody who came tonight. Thank you for the great conversation. I'm sorry I have to bow out now, but I do hope that we'll have more chances to talk in the future. So Sherlyn, thank you a million times.
Thank you. And yes, we definitely want you back. Just think of a topic and you're in, and pick a day.
Okay, take it easy.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you very, very much. Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. Okay, friends, thank you so much. Okay, so we can hang out for about another, I don't know, well, till 11 o'clock my time, East Coast time. I know some of you are in different places. And there's someone here that I know from way back, another Wisconsinite, maybe not an original Wisconsinite, but in Wisconsin for a long time. And I just want to shout out to her, because I'm just delighted that she's here. And I don't know how she got here, because I didn't send her an invitation. Hazel, there's only one Hazel Simonette. Can you holler at me, Hazel, or send me a chat? If you're still there. She's on mute. Maybe she's gone off. But anyway, Hazel's one of those phenomenal African-American women. She's worked for the University of Wisconsin-Madison Regents and the University of Wisconsin system, higher educational system. And she wears and is her Africanity every single day that I've ever known her. And she is a phenomenal wealth of information and dignity. And I hope she's listening. And I'm going to extend an invitation to you, Hazel, to come and share some of your knowledge with us as well, since I see you here in the room. So thank you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so let's know the latter part of the evening. I like to invite anyone that's still here that hasn't had an opportunity to speak or have their chat comment shared, to kind of, you know, let them have this space, at least before any of the rest of us continue on, you know, additional times. So is anyone here?
Cheryl, can you hear me?
Yes, Cynthia, you're faint though.
Okay, because we have 2 new people that came.
I know, and I called out Alusine earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. You did you?
Yes, I did. Yes,
Oh,
I
I'm
did.
sorry, Shelley. Oh, no, probably I was driving from work and I was listening.
Oh,
Every bit of it is so interesting, and I love to be part of this. It's mind blowing. Jenny, I'm from Sierra Leone. Yes, I'm from Sierra Leone. Yes, and the northern part of Sierra Leone. I'm from Lonsar. And I spend most of my time in Freetown.
Okay.
And it's interesting when Jenny was saying we respect people and we embrace everybody. In fact, if I go with Jenny to Freetown, they will give her the best place to sleep than me. They will prefer. I mean, it's interesting when we get this kind of discussion, see how much the Baha'i faith bring us together and the unity that exists amongst. Yeah, it's interesting. I really love it. And Jenny, thank you very much for spending some time in Freetown. And I know you met a lot of people. I don't know which year was that, but my name is Alusine Kabia, and I know most of the friends in Sierra Leone. They know me very well.
Okay, well, you know, you guys can exchange email addresses or phones in the chat privately to one another. so you can
Right.
continue your connection. That's wonderful. That's another
Right.
nice outcome of
Thank
this.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
I've been waiting all these years to find somebody from Sierra Leone. So this is so
Oh my
exciting
goodness.
for me. And
Okay.
I need some of the good food that I had there.
We just have some potato leaf,
Yeah,
cassava leaf.
yeah.
Yes.
The sweet potatoes and yams. So anyway.
Right. Lovely. Lovely. Yes, sure. I just put my for Shelly, I put my email address,
Okay.
aluzi1@yahoo.com. So
Okay, great.
yes.
And I'll make sure you get connected
got
with
it.
Janine.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. That'll happen right away as soon as I get the chat.
Thank you for hosting. It's really, really interesting and very educative. Very
Yes,
educative.
we're grateful to have you here and to have your perspective. You know,
Thank you. Thank
you're
you.
going to bring a lot to this group. So I hope we can see you as often as you can make this call.
I'll try. I'll try.
What time is it? What time is it now where you are?
I'm in Virginia. It's
Oh yeah,
it's the same
right.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Woodbine,
I
Virginia.
remember when
You're right.
yeah, I started this afternoon. Yeah, I log in. I'm on you right now.
That's
When the
right.
program started, yes.
That's right. Yeah,
I
we
was here,
talked
but
at the
I
beginning.
was with the uniform. That's why I probably couldn't recognize.
That's why you look different. Okay. Well, you got to
Right.
stop changing up on us like that now.
Yeah, that's true. I changed in between.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Thank you. And
No problem.
Anissa, Cynthia thinks you've never been here before. Is that true, Anissa? I think you have. So which one of us is right?
Yeah.
Hi, aloha. I attended the Indigenous, the Native American, and the people of that conference, and I attended all those days.
Okay.
I've attended like a few devotionals and discussions and study whatever Cynthia invites me to.
Okay. Okay.
Come to, but I as well live in the same community as Cynthia and Aluzine.
Okay, that's how she knows you guys haven't been here
Yes,
before.
yes.
Okay. I thought Cynthia's here on the regular too. And I thought, boy, Cynthia's keeping track for me. That's awesome. You almost got a job you didn't know you had, Cynthia. Oh, well, welcome, Anissa. Welcome.
Thank you. I also want to say thank you so much for such a informative and educational and just very inspirational and eye-opening program.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's all on the speakers. It's the speakers and Nason. Nason's, got the Zoom account, and the speakers do the work. They do the presentation. So all the honors, go to them. But we appreciate hearing it. Thank you so much. Let's see here. Crystal, are you still there? Oh, Hazel's off her mute. Hey, Hazel.
Hey,
How are you?
I am super deluxe. You say you were in Madison?
Yes, this is Sherilyn Stevens.
This is the Sherilyn that I know?
Yes, it is.
Oh my God.
How you doing, girlfriend?
Oh my God.
Did you hear all the nice things I said about you a few minutes ago?
I sure didn't.
Oh, well, let me say them again.
Are you serious?
Yes. Tell her. Didn't I say nice things about her a few minutes ago? I was asking you, I said, I know this.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, I said, I know there's only one Hazel Simonette. And I said, I don't know how she got here because I didn't give her an invitation. She didn't get an email from me. I said, I'm really delighted she's here. I said, I know Hazel. I said, from Wisconsin. I don't know if she's an original Wisconsinite, but she's lived there a very long time. And I said, she's worked on race issues at the University Regent's Office, the University of System, it's the higher education system for the state of Wisconsin. And every time I've seen her anywhere, anytime, she has been nothing about looking and being her Africanity.
have mercy.
Yes, girl. Yes, girl. And I would love to have you come and give us a talk. Oh, God. Oh, my God. I am so excited you're here.
Oh, my goodness. Jerry Lynn Peak.
Oh, so you know Jerry Peak. Okay.
Yes, I do.
All right. All right.
My goodness. I said, coming back to Wisconsin, what?
Yes, I'm moving back in the spring.
Really?
Be with my grandkids, yeah. You know,
Oh.
April Kagea is my daughter.
Yes.
That's my oldest.
Yes. Oh my God.
Mhm. She's still in shock. Hazel's in shock.
Oh my God.
See, I've known the whole time that you were you, so I had a lot of time to adjust that you were here. I know this is all just hitting you at once. But yeah, shoot me your email. You know, I'd love to chat with you, you know.
Well, I was trying to see, but your name wasn't here. I didn't want to send it to everyone.
Yeah, it should just be, do I come up in there?
No.
Yeah, you're right, I don't.
She's going to be right at the top.
I went there. At the top of mine, it says everyone and then Winnie.
And then
now it's in here. Oh.
Okay. Nason had me cut off. That's why Nason was forwarding me everyone's comments because they were all going there.
Okay.
I was wondering why all the comments, direct comments were getting over to you, Nason, which was cool. You guys kept Nason busy. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, shoot me your email and or your phone. I'd love to connect with you.
I sure will. Oh,
yeah. And I'd love to hear what you thought about the program.
It's phenomenal. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. We're trying to do the work.
Yeah.
It's all about doing the work. We have to change this world.
I know that's right.
We have to change this world. And that was one question I meant to ask Laylee to address, was this metaphor that we have in reference to people of African descent, pupil of the eye. Nason, would you take that on and just kind of, you know, because I don't know if everyone here is familiar with that anyway.
Familiar with what? Sorry, say the question again.
The pupil of the eye concept.
Oh, just the concept is, I mean,
yeah.
The pupil of the eye itself is a reference that Baha'u'llah made to the Black peoples of the world, and referencing them, he likened their spirit to the pupil of the eye, and the effect of that in society, I think is far-reaching in how we begin to approach what that concept looks like. When you realize that the pupil allows you to see, it's a very important part of the eye, and yet throughout our societies, the Black peoples of the world have been seen as less important. And so by elevating that status to the pupil, Baha'u'llah explained just how vital and important this whole measure of people are to society. So that, I think, is where the pupil of the eye has its meaning.
Yeah, thank you, Nason. Yeah, you know, the pupil of the eye generates the light, and we're really, Baha'u'llah is recognizing and affirming that people of African descent are the light of the world, that we help the world to see the reality of things. Yeah, it's something. There's a fantastic article, I'll send it to you, by Derek Smith about that. And he places it in the context of juxtaposing the Baha'i faith and the relationship of people of African descent to supplanting the less than useful aspects of modernity. It's quite interesting. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I'll send it to you. It's a scholarly piece, And that's what I meant to have Laylee address, because she's so eloquent, you know, she's so eloquent.
Wow.
Okay, there's a couple other people here. Cersei, are you still here, Cersei? You didn't even recognize me, Hazel? Well, I have changed. It's been a long time.
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, great. Hi, Cersei.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm fine. I was brought to this community by Kelly Coe. She invited me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Baltimore, Maryland,
Okay.
and so learning about the Baha'i faith and participating in some of the studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So that was
And
Kelly, who again?
Koay, K-O-A-Y, I think.
Koay. Okay. Well, I don't think she was here tonight, was she?
I didn't see her.
Yeah, I didn't see her name come up either. Well, do you have any questions or comments or, you know?
Oh, I was just enjoying this whole Sierra Leone connection because I've worked for years in Sierra Leone in global health. And I worked in child survival, working with child soldiers.
Oh, wow.
And nutrition, malaria. So I have Sierra Leone is very dear to my heart.
Yes. How long were you there? And do you have roots there? Culturally speaking or genetically speaking?
Well, yeah. My ancestors are 76% West African, different tribes, according to my DNA imprint.
Right.
And the 24% is from other places, but 76% is West African. But in terms of, I've worked in global health, and over the span of 15 years, worked in Sierra Leone, and I was scheduled to work there, to be posted there when Ebola broke out. So that contract was retracted.
Right.
So, yeah, but I have good friends there, and yeah.
Right. Oh, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll be back again.
I hope I'm invited again. Yes.
Absolutely. So all I need is your email address.
Okay.
Yeah, put it in the chat. And again, you can send it to me directly. You know, it doesn't have to be out there for everyone if you're more comfortable with that. And yeah, you'll definitely get on the email list and get the link to this recording. Oh yeah, Carlotta, that's what I was going to talk about. Yes. So everyone that's on the email list for this series meets every second and fourth Saturday. The formal presentation time is 7:30 to 9:30 Eastern time, but we always go over that. And so there's always, you know, after chat that goes on. And whatever references, we're recording every session. We put that up on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the channel as well, and that will be in your welcome email. Okay, everyone that said they wanted to be put on the email list tonight, you'll get a welcome email from us, and it will have a link to our YouTube channel where you can go and see, you know, previous presentations. You'll also get the schedule of presentations. You'll see the ones that were done earlier this year, just for reference, and then those that we have currently scheduled for the upcoming year so far. And I try not to schedule no more than 6 months out, which is about where we are. So there's nothing in June yet, but that will come along, and I'll keep folks updated on that. And any references or links or things like that that are shared in the chat, I pull those out and also include them in the email, so that everyone has access to what was provided.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, and it's open to everybody, you know, anytime. And in January, we are going to have an extra session. You'll see that on the schedule. It's a 5-month Saturday. And on Martin Luther King's birthday, we're having a presentation by Todd Ewing. And Todd Ewing is a Black Baha'i in the Washington, D.C. area. And he's just reissued a publication toward oneness and eliminating racial prejudice. And he'll be talking about that journey and how the guidance, what we call these plans from the Universal House of Justice that are about community building, you know, how these plans have actually helped us lay the groundwork and to continue the work of eliminating racism, which for Baha'is is the most vital and challenging issue that must be addressed in the American community. It is vital, absolutely vital. And so this space is for people, Baha'is and, you know, friends of the faith, to come and learn about Black culture, how to identify and unlearn any racist tendencies, thoughts, and actions they may have. You know, for example, for white Baha'is in particular, just a number of things. And you'll see all of that mentioned in the email that you'll get. You also have a description of the series, which does a much better job of describing what it's for than I'm doing tonight, you know, because it's a little late. My voice is starting to go a little bit. But it goes into all of that. And not every presenter is a scholar. Like lately, we have novice presenters, people that are just doing the work, you know, right in the neighborhood, in the community, because we can all learn. And our watchword in this space is a humble posture of learning, that we're all learning and we're learning from each other. We don't have a hierarchy, okay? And knowledge, volition, and action. If you have knowledge but no volition, you go nowhere. If you have volition without action, you still haven't accomplished anything. And those three words come from Abdul Baha, where he talks about knowledge, volition, and action. You have to have all three to execute. He doesn't use the word execute, but you know, that's me. So those are kind of our watchwords, if you will, so that we don't lose a sense of purpose. This is not just to come and listen and, you know, go home, but hopefully to inspire, to encourage self-reflection and develop relationships, you know, as well with the individuals in the group. And that happens all the time in nice ways. Okay, so let's see. That was Circe. Jean Marie, what's up? You still there, Jean Marie?
Yes, I'm still existing here.
All right, how are you?
I'm good. I've been zooming all over the place, so I'm kind of schizophrenic.
I hear you.
And I put my contact in the chat because I came through a group, we're studying the post-traumatic slave syndrome book.
Right.
So I really appreciate that you're steadfastly doing this series. There's a lot of things competing for our time these days, which is amazing.
Isn't it?
And I was on the Grand Canyon conference for a little bit out in Phoenix. One thing that struck me, reminded me, is that we are to think globally and act locally.
That's right.
I was like, oh man, I need to get to work. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. And this is your first time here, right?
I believe so.
Okay, where are you hailing from?
I'm in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, are you? Okay, great. That's wonderful. Well, I'm glad you're here. Any thoughts or comments, you know, on the program this evening?
I really enjoyed thinking about what if the African, oh, now I'm at lost words. But really, the African way of being in the world and relationships, what if our culture was relationship based rather than object based?
Mm-hmm.
And I liked how she used Wakanda to discuss it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't have any gems to drop, but I'd certainly gain that. Well, I do have one. I'll share from another space.
That's fine.
We're celebrating Kwanza in one of our breakouts.
Mm-hmm.
We were looking at some of the things that we need to overcome as a people.
Right.
And educationalism came up.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, the Greek organizations, the sororities and fraternities.
Okay.
Originally intended to be service units, you know, to reach back and uplift the community.
Right.
And yet we've slipped into the same Eurocentric, competitive, crabbing kind of behavior. So
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that at all. You're right.
At what age? Yeah.
That is a gem.
We all have things to work on, don't we?
Yes, we do. Just throw a dart, I say. You won't miss. You'll find something. Oh gosh, well, welcome to the group. We're delighted that you're here with us.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Miss Kia in Baltimore County. And then I'm coming for Tamika next. Are you there, Miss Kia? Okay, maybe not yet. How about Tamika? Hello, Tamika. And then,
hello?
Yes, hi.
I'm trying to move my screen up so I can unmute my, we call video.
Oh, yeah, so we can see you?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, thanks.
Oh, there you are. Okay, great. Hi.
Hi, I just learned about this tonight through Julia. She's a Baha'i in Los Angeles, but I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Wow, word's really getting out this week, huh? A lot of word of mouth I'm hearing about. That's great. But you're in Florida?
Yeah, Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta. Oh, okay, so Georgia.
Yes.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, awesome. But you heard about it from Julia in LA.
Yes.
Okay.
We're friends, so.
Okay, Julia who? Do you recall her last name? See, that's how good a friend you are.
Lives in like Orange County, Filipino.
Child, that doesn't help me at all.
There's a billion Baha'is.
That's okay. It's not an important question. That's okay. Well, welcome to the space.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I hope we can add you onto the email list here as well.
Well, I left my email address.
Okay, great. Okay, fantastic. Anything you'd like to share?
I really enjoyed this talk. It was refreshing, it was different because, well, a lot of what she was talking about, I study anyway. I study ontology. I study how people create the reality. I study subconscious programming.
Oh, wow.
I also study like quantum physics and all that other good stuff.
Oh, we got to have you on. You know all about that. Tell me what your background is or what your profession is.
Well, I actually went to college, chemical engineering degree.
Okay.
But I didn't finish because of funds and money. And so
Sure.
I moved to Atlanta from Hampton because I was going to Hampton University. And just out of survival.
Right.
And because I wanted to go do my pilgrimage in Haifa, I got a job in hospitality.
Okay.
Worked a lot, made great money, and then I took off traveling for 4 months, and then I did a 9-day pilgrimage to Haifa.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I came back and stayed in hospitality. And then over time, I decided to, study what I really wanted to. And
Yeah. Yeah.
like that. And so after a house and 2 kids and marriage, now I'm able to focus on my life.
Right. I hear you. I hear you. That's a nice space to be in too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, I'd be very interested. I'll email you because it would be wonderful to have, especially given the level of interest that was shown here tonight, in those topics. And, the science and religion, really comes together. Yeah, so that would be really cool. But anyway, I think I interrupted you.
Give a talk.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. As long as we can relate it to race, racial healing, racial justice, it's on.
Oh, definitely. And I really like to talk about solutions, real solutions that I think would really bring about a lot of healing and unity.
Okay. That sounds
Stuff that people aren't even talking about or even considered yet.
Awesome. All right. You're going to hear from me.
Okay.
If you shoot me your phone number too, I usually do most things by email though, but I'd appreciate your phone number too, in case we have trouble getting in touch with each other. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And since you're new to the group, I really want to recommend that when you get onto our YouTube channel, that you check out Gillian Sturdivant's presentation. It's called Polishing the Mirror of Dross. No, I got that wrong. Is Jillian still here?
I
No,
think you got it right.
Did I get it right,
Mirror of
Bernadine?
racial dross.
Yeah, polishing the mirror of removing the dross of racial trauma. Was that right, Nason? He wasn't paying.
Sounds right. I'm just trying to pull it up right now.
Okay, thanks. Because I may have shortened it, just so it was easier to read on the YouTube thing. Anissa
Polishing the Mirror of the Dross of Racial Trauma with Gillian Sturdivant. That's how it's listed on.
Here it is.
YouTube.
Thank you, Berdina. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nason. Okay. Well, I am so glad you're here. That's wonderful. Just wonderful. Okay. Did she leave? Oh, shoot. She got away from me. Where did she go? All right. She's gone. So I think we just have Miss Kia, who's still there. I got 2 phone numbers, and then Agnes. Agnes, are you still there, Agnes? Here she comes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Agnes. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm really good. I'm really good. Welcome. Is this your first time here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome. I hope you'll come back.
Yes, ma'am. I will. Thank you for them.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Anything you'd like to share about what brought you here, or who brought you here, or what you thought?
My daughter brought me here.
Oh, who's your daughter?
Jennifer Treadwell.
Oh, she is. Really? Okay.
She's my spiritual daughter.
All right. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Well, I'm sorry.
I'm beginning a youth group. And when she was talking about the book about Carter Wilson, and I have a book that he wrote called The Miseducation of the Negro.
Yes.
And I was wondering how could I put this within my category of teaching with these young people. They're not children, they're young adults. So I'm used to children, but I'm not used to young adults. And trying to find ways to instill things in them that they should know. Because he made a statement, one of the young men made a statement, said that the education that he has received, all the things he has been taught, does not prepare him for the things that he faces in life.
That's right.
So this is a challenge, you know. I was really surprised he was that intelligent, but children.
Yeah, those youth will surprise you, dude.
Their minds are so absorbing.
Yes.
But to think that we as adults have failed our children, you know, because they should be prepared, especially in this day and time, you know,
That's
with
right.
everything being so open. But
Yeah.
I thank Jennifer for inviting me, and I'll be back. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And you know, what you just said just now about what you're doing and what you'd like to do, I think that would make a wonderful panel discussion for the friends to come together and talk about that. You know, how do we, you know, the youth groups are set up to empower the youth and give them the spiritual tools and the tools of virtue to help them see the world differently in a more positive light, and also to see themselves as equipped to be their own agents of change. But in that context, how can you add in this history and this understanding? And I think that might be a very interesting topic of value to many people, because there are many of these youth groups going on, you know, in many, you know, Black communities and, you know, and mixed communities, what have you. And I think this is a very important topic. Would you be interested in thinking about that and maybe talking with me about that more? And Jennifer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, great. So if you could, if you haven't left your email, could you leave it for me and your phone? And again, you can just send it to me private if you want. Of course, no one here is gonna, you know, use the information. Because I'd like to reach out to both of you and kind of hear about where you are in your process of starting this youth group, and talk more, explore more about what it is you'd like to do and how this might be something we can bring other people on that have different experiences with the youth groups.
I appreciate that, because these children have not been exposed to anything. So if you see a thing, then you can identify with a thing. So I think, you know, looking at people with different professions and just see what the world has to offer, because being Black, your world is Black, you know.
That's right.
It's full of darkness. So trying to put light into a world where there's so much darkness.
That's right. You're absolutely right. You have to see a thing to know that you can, that it's even there. If you don't get out of the neighborhood, you don't know what's out there. You have no reason to dream of something bigger, you know, or more, because you don't see it except what's on the TV, what's on the box, right? Yeah, yeah. So yes, and so we're about creating that vision in a number of different ways. So yeah, I may call on Nason and Jillian, because I know they've got youth of their own, and they've been involved in this work for some time. So I think they could lend a lot. Maybe we can all kind of get our heads together and see how we can address this, you know, in a panel or something. I see Anissa shaking her head. You in, Anissa? You in on this? You want in?
Yes, I'm all in.
All right, I'm making a list now.
It's youth impact. That's what we call ourselves here in the neighborhood that I live in.
Okay.
Majority African American, and the youth group calls themselves Youth Impact because impact on the world.
Okay, and that's a majority Black neighborhood?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
almost 99%, yeah.
Okay, so we got Anissa and Agnes. Agnes, could you just tell me your last name, please?
Ivory, Ivery.
Oh, what an interesting spelling. I've never seen that. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, and so Janet, or Jennifer, sorry. Jennifer doesn't know what's coming, does she?
She loves me, so she'll be there.
All right, I know she will.
You know how you say, I'm the mama, she the child, so you gotta be there.
Okay, all right. It sounds like we got ourselves a little work group going here to talk some of this out. And maybe Nissan or Jillian, I don't want to put them on the spot right now, but I'm gonna put them on there, you know, and we'll see what we can do. So that's what I love about this, you know, especially these after-hour discussions. You know, this is where we get to share a little bit about each other, and this is where a lot of our well, not a lot, but a number of our topics come from these conversations. You know, and it's about hearing what you're doing and, you know, what you need and, you know, what's of interest and, you know, like Milton bringing up the conjunction and, you know, what that led to. And now Tamika's on for something and, you know, right. It just rolls. It just rolls. I tell you, Baha'u'llah is good. He's good. You know, I wonder sometimes, gosh, am I going to run out of, I said, I'll do this as long as we have topics, right? And it looks like there's no running out of topics. So that's great. I'm really delighted. I'm really delighted. Okay, so now we're going to go to these phone numbers that are here. Okay, who's the 609? Come on off mute. Say hello to us. Or the 3.
If you're on a phone, you can hit *6 and that will unmute you.
Huh? I can hit *6. Where?
If you're just on a phone and you're dialed in like that, then you hit *6 on your phone and that will unmute you.
Oh, okay, to get unmuted. Okay, so 609 or 301, whoever gets here first. Oh, we're way past 11 o'clock.
Yeah, we've been praying for you, you know, for your health to get better. So you might as well, I mean, we hate to see you go, Miss Cheryl-Lynn, but you got to take care of your health because we got to see you tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. And I got a long day tomorrow.
And we've all been praying for you. So you ride those prayers, but you do your part in getting that bed.
Yeah, that's true. And I really have been. And I meant to say that earlier. Thank you, Janine. I meant to say that earlier. You don't know how much I missed not having our session 2 weeks ago. Oh boy, I just missed you all so much because this is a pattern of behavior for me. This is a pattern of action. And when, you know, I couldn't, you know, make it, oh, it hurt. And, you know, I really struggled. I sent out an email to everyone saying that, you know, I had to cancel the meeting because I couldn't host it. I was ill. And the thing I needed most was to rest, you know, and not be on email and all that stuff. So I asked the friends, you know, please don't, you know, email me, but, you know, I'd appreciate your prayers. Oh boy, was that a double-edged sword? Because I'm looking at my phone, it's like, oh, I wish I could hear from somebody. I know the friends are praying for me, but oh, I sure would like to hear from somebody. But it was.
But we all afraid to call you or talk to you or bother you or anything. We wanted you to rest and get better.
I know only 3 people broke the request.
And probably one of them was your sister.
No. Well, no, yeah, but I didn't count her because she's my sister, you know, so she checked up on me, right? Yeah, so, you know, I didn't count her, but 3 people broke it. But I appreciate it. But boy, did I miss you guys. I just missed it like nobody's business. It was painful. I had withdrawal symptoms. I really did. I had real withdrawal symptoms.
Well, we missed too. I want you to know, and it's 11:22 now. In case you need.
Okay, Verdina's getting.
And I'm gonna say good night, and I love you. After I gave you my little preaching like a sister.
Yes, I appreciate the love. I appreciate that love, Verdina. I really do. I appreciate it.
Good night, and a nice thank you everyone for your comments.
Good night. Okay, so yeah, we better go. Thank you, Janine. And I'm so glad you made these great connections with your family from Sierra Leone and vice versa. That's just awesome, awesome, awesome. You have to keep us posted, you know, if more comes from that. But that's wonderful. We can connect with each other like this. So good night, everyone. And Nason, what do you think the turnaround time is going to be?
It usually takes a couple hours to finish transcribing it. So tomorrow morning, I'll look for it and try to upload it to you. So
awesome. Okay, fantastic. That will be fantastic. And I recorded, so this time I'll have the chat and I can, do all my chat business and get that part out of the way. And then just have to get it on YouTube and do any little edits, or whatever to it, like this part that we're talking about right now. Okay, well, thank you so much, friends. It has just been a delight. I hope it's been good for you, and look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, 2 more weeks, and look for the email. It'll come soon.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Shirley.
Bye.
Love to you.
Bye.
Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks. You too, Hazel. I'll be in touch.
All right. Blessings.
Yes, yes. Same to you.
All right. Take good care. Bye-bye.